And we are back. Couch Company Podcast. I'm John. With me as always, Tyler.
Hello. Hi.
And special guest, returning guest,
Foreshadowed guest.
Justin.
Boys, it is a pleasure and an honor, as it always is.
Hello.
Always excited.
Love having
You
you on.
nodded, and I was like, well, you're going to have to say something so people know you're here.
I didn't know when I was supposed to jump in.
perfect.
Buddy, I'm
Perfect.
I'm
I
an
love it.
amateur on this.
I always wait way too long, though,
Yep.
which messes Tyler up.
Yep.
So I don't blame you at all.
So
for that.
I got to ask you, Jonathan, the intro song you wrote, is that correct?
I didn't write necessarily. It's like loops
Okay.
that I got. Nothing crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, but
just
that's
put something
you, right?
together. Just put it together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, thanks.
That was one of 4 or 5, right? Like, you made a bunch.
I sent you a couple
Yeah.
things. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, my mother was a music teacher, so like,
yeah?
and I know you're a musician. So
Sure.
every time I hear that intro, I'm like, yeah, it's good because Jonathan did it. So
I appreciate
makes
it.
sense to me.
It's just a little vibe check.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I did go to college for it, so it's like
It's
know.
validation.
there's
Yeah.
right there you go.
Yeah.
All worth it.
Well, I wish I
Excellent.
could say the same about my college education.
Oh yeah. What'd you go to college for?
Marketing, but
Oh well, that's useful.
boy, I'm not the right person in marketing at all.
Because you're
like,
honest.
And like the stuff that's like considered hip, I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
I don't have the mindset to like be
Yeah.
in marketing, but the business classes were fantastic, and obviously that's what I pursued. So wasn't always
Worked
but
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's fair. I mean, I started out in animation, and I was like, this not my cup of tea.
yep.
When did you realize you're like, this is not it?
First quarter. Yeah.
All right, that's good. That's a good
Yeah.
spot to know.
When I saw everyone else, like specifically drawing, like I can draw, but like you're like Josh is really good
He's
at drawing. Like your brother's
fantastic.
awesome.
Yep.
I can do it, but I don't do a good job, and I don't enjoy it. So it's one of those like
Double whammy.
I wanted to go for 3D. I wanted to do modeling. I wanted to, but to complete the course, you had to do 2D drawing, and my ego just couldn't take like the not straight A's.
Yeah.
So
You seen Gracie? Her drawings
yeah,
are
fantastic.
really, really good.
Yep.
She's talented. I mean,
I-
it runs in the family.
The main thing with that is like you just really have to love doing it.
Yep.
And the people that do that, you can really tell. And whenever I was like in some of the other like graphic design classes and things like that, I'm just like, oh no, this is like I'm artsy, but I'm like a very kind of like logic based brain. So it's like, no, this makes more sense. There are rules, there are things where art, it's like break the rules, go crazy, do whatever, like within reason. But like me, I'm like, I want structure. I like,
that
so
makes
that's
sense.
kind of where I like deviated.
Now, when you're in school, though, it's just people in your grade, though, that you're like not competing against, but like seeing their drawings of, right? Because like in music, for example, what was
Yeah.
tough for us is since we're like in ensembles, it's freshmen all the way up to like grad students.
Yeah.
So that was tough for me because it was like I'm just a little freshman, and then people are just playing circles around you, and you're like, dang, I suck. So
Generally speaking, yeah.
yeah. Okay, gotcha.
See, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like it's always good, like in the MMA world, to have someone better than you. Like that's who you should be training with. If you're the kingpin, then you need to go somewhere else to find somebody that's better.
Yep.
It's the only way you get better.
Yeah.
So like I get it, it can be intimidating, but at the same point, like how else do you get better?
No, it was the best thing for me for sure. That's I think that applies to pretty much anything in life.
Yeah.
Like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room.
Yeah,
You know, you're
totally
You're not
agree.
gonna learn anything. But
Yeah.
interesting.
So I wanted to bring up a couple things here.
Yes.
Before we get into like the heavy stuff. So Tyler, my
Yeah.
beautiful, wonderful cousin who I love dearly. So he had me try out 2 games, kind of 2 games. One was Avowed, which after listening,
Which we never talked about.
we didn't talk about
But
it.
you listened, and then that's
Yes,
correct.
correct.
Okay.
And then Veilguard was the first one.
Dragon Age, yeah.
Yep, Dragon, and that is Veilguard, correct?
Yes.
Like Dragon.
Yep.
Okay,
The Veilguard.
gotcha. Okay.
God.
Actually, it might not be. I think it's Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I don't know. Never mind. Continue.
So you were pretty accurate on the Veilguard. I thought it was really good. Here's where you and I differ slightly. Boy, those dialogue trees, I'm like, all right, come on, guys. I got to the point, man, where I didn't really care who had to say what because I didn't care.
Sure.
And I'm just hitting the B button to get it going.
Yeah.
But thank you for somebody actually making a game that's not broken right off the bat.
Yeah.
Looks amazing. And it ran at 6. And I know 60 frames to you guys are like, that's terrible. That's so weak.
Depends what game.
If it's consistent.
It was a consistent 60
Yeah.
frames. And the graphics were fantastic. And I'm a graphics whore, as you know. And I really enjoyed the combat. What a refreshing, wonderful.
What did you play as?
What you guys did, the warrior.
Yeah.
And he was fantastic. And I got him to look exactly how I wanted him to look. The voice acting was unbelievably fantastic, like just on all levels.
Yeah.
I just don't care about the dialogue.
Sure. That's fair.
But-
like across the board?
Yeah.
Or like, so even like certain characters and stuff, you didn't like gravitate towards
Nope.
anyone?
Was
Was there anything specific that to try, like why the dialogue didn't connect with you? Or
So to me, it was like, I know you guys mentioned this, it's like cosplay, like very predictable, very like vanilla. It is what it was supposed to be. Like I need something a little more realistic, a little more like to get me into it.
Yeah.
When it's like,
more gritty, maybe?
yes.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get into that. And I don't know the lore. I don't know like the history. So it didn't grab me at all.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it got me away from what was so good about that game is the combat. And it pulled me away from it. And I'm like, no, I just want to get back into the combat because it was that good.
Yeah.
So you did not oversell that. You were 100% accurate. It was phenomenal.
Awesome. That's
No.
not what I thought you were going to say. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the nudging to go ahead and try it out because that's one that I probably wouldn't have unless you
Well, when you
told
called
to.
me, you were called me or texted me. You were talking about Dragon's Dogma.
You almost Sweeney Todd my
I
ass.
could have, and I was like, I can't do that.
Oh,
That's like
man.
that does not.
Did
don't
you play
deserve
Dragon's
that.
Dogma?
No.
Oh, God.
Here's the thing: you might love Dragon's Dogma. I don't know. I don't think so, but who knows? It's like just a non-arcade version of Dragon Age.
And you're good at knowing what I would like. If he tells me I'm going to like something, Jonathan, like I'm going to like it,
Yeah.
except for Sweeney Todd.
I
When
thought
he-
I thought there was like some sort of curse or something.
Curse?
Or no, it's when you are excited for a game, it always flops. Is that
100%.
right?
Yes,
Okay,
that's the curse.
100%.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When was the
Excellent.
last?
Are you excited for any games this year? Or
So
Because if you are, keep it to yourself.
I got to be honest. Like,
this Expedition 33 game? I'm so excited for it.
Nah, it's not a Justin game.
Okay.
yeah. No, not really.
Are
so,
you a Doom fan?
Yeah, I love Doom. I think
Yeah.
it's one of the best games that was ever done. Even the original was absolutely fantastic and broke barriers that to that point games just didn't break. What a good game, man.
So you're probably looking forward to the one coming out this year.
It's my number one.
There you go.
I'll accept that. That's a pretty safe thing. I feel
yeah,
it's okay.
That's a blue chip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not an anthem or whatever the. What was the
Yeah,
most
what is
recent
the
one?
list?
No, it
Oh
wasn't
gosh,
the
the
anthem. There's
list
something else.
goes on and on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Redfall?
Redfall
Yeah.
was one.
Was it? Oh,
Yeah.
no. That was brutal.
I'm so excited for that game.
Oh,
It's like a common
man.
thing, especially like it'll be like around Thanksgiving, right? Because that's like right when like the holiday things come out, or it'll be like Easter. It will like talk and be like, "Oh, I'm really excited for this. It's coming out soon."
Yeah.
And then it's just bombs.
Yeah, I stopped. I stopped
Yeah,
texting you. I stopped calling you because, like, I don't believe in curses.
You
but
don't have to do that. I very much enjoy hearing from you, but yeah, it's like
when
not
it
a
comes
great
from
track
games,
record. Yeah.
I don't text you about games anymore because it just, I don't know what it is, man. Every time I get excited for a game, it just flops.
Yeah. Wow, that is interesting. I'm actually wondering, do you think he'd like Kingdom Come Deliverance?
oh man, I think the thing that you would like about that is the historical aspect of it.
So it's
I don't know.
it's set in Bohemia in 1300s.
Sounds right.
Yeah, Middle Ages.
Yeah, so it's super like all the characters in the game are historical figures except for the main character. So it's like a what
Yeah.
if scenario, I guess, or you're kind of just playing through this crazy
Yeah.
point in Bohemia's history. It's kind of like Skyrim where you just have like this open world you can explore and you just get, at least for me, I got sucked into like all the side quests and stuff,
Right.
and it's super immersive, first person. The combat's super interesting too. It's very, how would you describe it? Like technical?
The
like
opposite of Dragon Age.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
like you have
okay.
to like aim your sword, and it's very like traditional sword fighting. Like, there's been a lot of like sword fighters on YouTube and stuff reacting to it and being like, this is like the most accurate sword fighting
and I respect
representation in like a game. It's very cool. Like, you have to riposte, you have to like line up your sword correctly for different combos and stuff.
Like,
it's
if
very
you go
cool.
in knowing, like, hey, every single thing that you do is like going to be like very, very immersive.
yeah.
To a crazy bad degree that I think that like would be the thing that takes you out of it.
Yeah.
But graphically, I think you would enjoy it.
Does look great.
The world
Runs
looks
great.
really, really good.
Yeah.
And I think John mentioned it I think you mentioned on the cast or maybe off air, but the world is such a well realized to scale thing. So like if you're running through the woods, it feels like you're actually running through the woods. And I don't think any other, like you said, like any other game really has not captured that.
Okay.
And it's very good. I just don't.
Yeah, it might not be for you. Like,
Yeah,
for example,
it's
like the mini games and stuff, like when you're smithing, like making swords and stuff, like you have to hammer it out. It takes you like 5 minutes to do it. You gotta hammer it, you gotta put it on the furnace, light it up, make sure it's the right temperature. It's like very like you gotta do every little step.
I fully admit that I am way too harsh when it comes to gaming, especially as I get older. And I sound like an old man, but I am. So it's okay.
I wouldn't say that, but
oh, buddy, I'm old. But
Okay.
like it's gotta grab me rather quick because I don't have the time where I did in the past where I was sitting up in college. I'm like, well, what else am I going to do? Of course I'm going to play this game.
Right.
Now it's like, you got to get me and you got to get me early or I'm moving on.
I will say, I think the game
intro is
grabs
very
you.
good,
It's a
yeah.
very good intro.
yeah.
Now,
It's just the mechanics are
correct me if I'm wrong. It is not on Game Pass or it is on Game
not
Pass?
on Game Pass.
Okay.
It's not on Game Pass.
And I will be completely straightforward. Whenever I try it, so we played it on mouse and keyboard. And I mean, you have 10 times more hours than I do. But I did it on mouse and keyboard, and I was like, oh, I wonder how it is on controller, because I just want to kind of sit back and just walk around a forest and do the things. The controller felt off to me. Like, it felt a little tough to navigate through the menus. I think it has an amazing UI, but I think it's very much for a mouse and keyboard, personally. Now, granted, it could just be I was just used to it, and then going to a mouse and or a controller without actually, like, getting the tutorial pop up saying, oh, here's how you do everything.
right.
I don't know. Would I like trust it that you would like it at like full price? No. If it goes on sale like Christmas or something,
Right.
might be worth
Okay.
checking out.
Yeah, like I'll put it on the list because, quite honestly, I've been relatively disappointed in the games as of late. They're always broken. They don't work. I cannot believe we are still not at the point of 4K 60 frames.
Yeah, native.
I don't
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because to jump into Val, if you don't.
No, yeah, because that's a great comparison. So go ahead. Yeah.
So, and I probably made the mistake because that was the game I kind of played right after
Dragon Age?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wow, man, like maybe I didn't get an hour in. I was like, I'll give it an hour. I couldn't
saw
even do that.
Yeah. It has a little less than sign with a 1 next to it for you. So
Like,
like
Tyler,
Justin doesn't like this game.
Oh, it was just unreal. Like I laughed out loud whenever, like, after the shipwreck and there's this little blue cat guy girl thing.
Yeah.
And I never laugh out loud during a game, and I laughed out loud like, okay, this is okay.
Yeah.
And then the first, I guess, villains that you meet are like little lizard people. Buddy, like, I laughed again, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe the combat will save it. I know you enjoyed the combat, and I probably didn't give it enough time, but boy, like, after playing the Veilguard, I'm like, absolutely not. Nope.
Yep.
This combat, and not to mention that the graphics and everything, Skyrim looks like better almost.
Then Avowed.
Now I'm playing on a console.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And obviously the updated version of Skyrim, but like the NPCs would actually move. If you like shot somebody, they'd be like, "Hey, why'd you kill my aunt?"
Oh, sure. Yeah.
In this, they do not move. The world was dead to me, completely dead.
Interesting. Okay. Yes. Then I agree with you there. Yeah.
I was like, "I'm stealing your loot. Are you going to say something?"
Yeah.
No. Okay, we'll go steal your neighbors then. And like, even the perspective of the hands, because everyone was like, "Oh yeah, make sure you use like the magician to some degree with the spells." The hands and arms were off, and I don't know if it was the same for PC or not, but Have you ever watched like Saturday Night Live with Kristen Wiig, who she's like that funny sister with like the long hands with the
the
little
Lawrence Welk show and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, that's what those arms looked like.
Interesting.
I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. This is what you spent 5 years on. This is what you spent 5 years on.
Yeah.
And like I saw a video because I was so disappointed. I pulled up a video where they showed like the updated version of Skyrim. It's like, here's fire in Skyrim. Here's fire in Avowed.
Yeah.
Fire in Skyrim look better. Okay. Here's and they just kept going comparison, and every single one was better in Skyrim.
Super interesting. Okay.
Now, Tyler, I'll be the first to admit I have zero patience nowadays, and I probably I didn't give it the full due that I probably should have. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back to Gears of War 5 because I haven't played that forever. And like, hey, it's new and improved for Series X. It looked amazing. It ran beautiful. That was the other thing. It didn't run. If I wanted good graphics on Avowed, it did not run at 60 frames.
Yeah.
How is that even a thing nowadays?
Do they set like there's like two options, like performance and yeah.
Yep. And Gears looked amazing. It's fun. It plays amazing.
Yeah.
And I got sucked into Gears. Jonathan, I'll be the first to admit it. I'm like,
Gears is great. It's
but I probably played that game like 4 times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's all right. Like, I need something to play. And with you guys not playing Tekken anymore, I kind of dropped Tekken.
Yeah. I do want to get back to
get
Tekken,
back.
like we were saying, with all the new characters. Do you
it's-
ever play Anna? I know Anna just got released.
No,
Classic.
not in the past and not in this game either, but she was cool. Like Nina was still cool in my opinion.
Well, obviously.
100%, right? But Anna's cool.
Yeah.
It's just there's been no character that I would want to pick up and start learning.
Yeah.
And Bruce is not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
We know this. So now I'm
But
stuck
the
on
rumors
Victor.
were the Thai
Yeah, but we never
kickboxer.
played
Marduk.
him. No, well, he's a wrestler.
Oh, Marduk's the
Marduk
wrestler.
was from 4.
Who's the Thai kickboxer?
That's what I mean. I don't know. He's from like,
because he's the one who's
6 or
all
7.
tatted up, right?
yeah.
So Bruce was the kickboxer too. That's
Yeah.
why I selected him, and I think that was 3.
Bruce was
three?
2.
Okay, so
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Technically
Interesting.
one and 2, I think. At least 2.
your memory is
I don't
better
know.
than mine.
Yeah. Because he died, quote unquote, died in
2.
in 2. Because that's when they wiped the
Tyler knows all the lore.
When
man.
they
It's
wiped the
so
roster. Whenever I got my PlayStation, it was Tekken 3. I was
With
all
everyone's
excited,
kid,
and then I didn't
Yeah.
know anyone.
Yeah,
It's like I
yeah.
know Heihachi, so I guess I'll play him. I don't know.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, if they bring him back in some way, shape, or form, or any Muay Thai kickboxer,
Yeah.
I'll learn him and I'll have 2 characters. But
I know you were super disappointed in Azucena because she was like MMA,
yeah,
and then she like does nothing.
Dude,
MMA.
Penny does more MMA than Azucena does.
I would say her grabs are kind of MMA ish. That's about it. Everything else is.
As in, she has a grab on the ground.
well, and I remember like when
She has like a like she has like a I don't even know what you call it, but like a leg chokehold. That's
Like
pretty
a-
cool.
she has like a form of a triangle choke and she has an arm bar.
Yeah,
and-
but it's like it kind of reminds me of what's her face, where she's just like a dancer pretty much, but the blonde chick, the French chick,
hang on. Yes, I know.
Lily.
Lily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her
Yeah.
style is like, what is it called? Custom or something?
Yeah, like, it's just like self-taught.
Self-taught. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
that's Anna. Yeah,
Fighting
it's like
style.
when they don't know what to give them, they're just like, they learned something new
In
on
the
their
forest.
Thing.
Yeah,
like Anna relearned her fighting
That's
stance to
what
incorporate a
Azucena should have
bazooka.
been. Is like street dancer,
Yeah.
fighter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's the beauty of Tekken. Like it's
Yes,
just so
yes.
over the top. If you don't take it serious,
Anything
it's-
works.
Anything works. I mean, the bears fighting are hilarious.
That's
We've had some
when we
good
pull it
belts.
out, yeah.
As we would always like our thing would be randomly we'll pull out one of the bears. I play Kuma and he'll play Panda, and then the other person freaks out because it's like if you lose against the bear, dude, you're like gonna be
Jonathan,
made
you
fun of
beat me
forever.
with the bear. Remember that? I'm like,
I
wait,
did.
I don't know what he's doing because I never
I'm
know when
very
plays
bad
them.
with the bear too. I want to be good with Kuma, and I don't vibe with him at all. I wish I did. He's really hard because the problem is anything you whiff, everything he does is punishable.
Yep.
Everything. Like if they block you, you're just dead. I don't know how Kuma players do it.
Which is why I respect them, but you never see them. So when you
The
finally
world champion is a Kuma player.
what?
Yep. Kuma won the first
did he?
Tekken World Tour
Yeah.
Championship.
I did not know that.
Which I think I've said this previously, it should be like canon in the lore that since he won the world championship, Kuma should have won like the Iron Fist tournament
He
or
should have
whatever.
beat Paul, like
Yeah.
bare minimum. Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome.
No,
Good
it
on
was
that
so
player,
sick. I was
because-
watching it. I was like, dude, no way this guy. I think he's a Japanese player.
Yeah.
Super cool. Yeah.
Such a good game, though. But
Yeah.
those are the games that I want to play and expect to play in today's age, and they don't. No one delivers. No one delivers.
Yeah, that game looks beautiful, runs great, super fun. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Did you play Astrobot?
No, that's on the list though.
That's I think
a
you'd like that.
Guaranteed. Like you got.
That's like a return to form. This is a video game, just fun.
And
Do you
couple
have?
hours.
Is it a disc?
it is
PlayStation?
not. It is not.
I was gonna say I literally have it right here. You can just take it home.
yeah.
But, yeah.
Unfortunately, it
That's
is
what
not.
happened with
Thing of
John.
the past, yeah.
But just listening to you guys talk about it, I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. That's going to get played.
Yeah.
And that's the other, like the PlayStation games. I bought the PlayStation only for single player games, and they're phenomenal. I can't believe like there's never a sale, like ever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Which
why
is
at
fine.
PC, like you spend $6,000 on it, but then like I don't
you,
think I've
you
we've
don't make that up though,
over the course of
because I bought mine like 5 years ago now.
okay, so let's say 5 years you play however many games. Games are $80 now, $70 now, whatever. Once Grand Theft Auto comes out, and it's $100. The games are gonna be $100 now.
But I do have Game Pass.
Well, Game Pass is,
So
is the
I've gotten
yeah.
a lot of mileage on Game Pass.
But PlayStation games, you're 100% right. You're paying $70
because they know that's where like
Yeah.
that's their bread and butter, right? Like
Yeah.
they make good games. Xbox like is like such a coin flip.
It's interesting because like Avowed is the same. Like it's Unreal 5.
Yeah,
So like if it's not
that
running
is
well
shocking to me.
on Xbox,
Agreed.
that's a great point though. As far as the like NPCs and things like that, like I think they are absolutely dead. I think, and if you don't like Dragon Age's dialogue, dude, Avowed has 10 times more. It's like it's insane. I think Avowed, the choices you make in it are better in a way because it's like they actually like mean something and they actually affect the world in a kind of meaningful way. Where like Dragon Age, you had maybe like one of
Right.
those, maybe two, but like yeah, Avowed, it's like I'm there for like the combat. But if you don't like everything you listed off, Deliverance 2 might be like
Oh,
that-
I was
that
just gonna
might
say,
be
dude, if
the
you're
game
like,
for
oh, I
sure.
want to steal something and they react, yeah, that's
like Deliverance
that's your
will
game.
be
Well, that's how you pull me in. Like
Yeah.
if there's realistic consequences in real time, of course that's going to pull
dude.
me
It's
in.
to the point where like you commit a crime, depending on what crime it is, you'll be put in the stockade, you'll be
yeah.
given a fine, whatever, all the way up until you get hung and the game's over. You have to restart.
I like
Yeah,
this
it's crazy.
lady put a hit out on a guy, so I go and I kill him in a field, loot him, and I'm just like, oh, he has this sweet ring, and as I just put all his put it on, and I'm just walking through town, and then like his wife recognizes the ring and just runs to the guard and just starts like screaming and stuff, and the guards are chasing you and stuff. So it's like that's the level of detail that game has.
Yeah, amazing. That,
So, like,
Crazy.
If you want to lose
how it
yourself
should
in a
be.
game, but
Yeah.
it's like slow. It's like it's very, very like
very
plotting
methodical,
and
yeah.
methodical, and you have like a weight limit. So like you're going to be like, I was like, oh, walk 15 minutes and I'll just sell everything. That's fine.
The beautiful
But, like,
thing though is like when you're over encumbered in that game, your stat, like your strength stat and your vitality stat go up.
which that makes sense.
Exactly. Like
That-
you're just,
Yeah.
it's a bunch of like weight training. So I leveled those stats up by like walking across the map just with like a ton of weight on my back.
But at least there was thought put into that.
Yeah.
And to me that merits a playthrough because of how well they thought through these type of issues. Where Avowed, I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
These little lizard people and like that guy, the little blue cat. I laughed out loud.
So it's like too like cartoonish for you. Is that
Not and just not polished. Like again, I'm playing on a console.
Yeah.
It looked terrible. It ran terrible. No matter which either performance mode or the other one, whatever it is, it didn't matter. And whenever people don't react, like come on, like that's something that they were doing back, in 2008.
Yeah.
Video games were, and you're telling me you can't put that in there now? Like
Even like a hey, maybe don't shoot an arrow at my face or something. Just,
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
anything.
Especially
And
if it's supposed to be like an open world, like RPG kind of thing.
Avowed's weird like that, where it's like it's not really open world. It's
Right.
kind of like these like sections and different things like that. I think the biggest thing I liked about Avowed is that it rewards exploration, and I haven't had something like that since Zelda, where like I didn't really like Zelda either, but I enjoyed like just going off on this path, and like every time I found like a chest behind a waterfall and a blow up this wall and you can get a chest here, and like it does like a sound cue whenever there's like a secret somewhere, you can kind of go find it, and I always felt rewarded there. And I think that's cool, and like you kind of feel that progression. But the story definitely doesn't grab me in a value. I'll review it whenever I get back to it, because we've been on Monster Hunter, which is not a Justin game.
Oh
at
my
all.
gosh, you would hate this game.
Yeah.
I was already told that by multiple
Yeah.
friends that play it. I know I won't, and it doesn't. Apparently, it's not working very well. A lot of crashes, a lot of issues.
Yeah, I haven't ran into any crashes or anything. It's not running super well for me. Tyler's had no issues.
I've had no issues.
Oh, good.
For
Nice.
me
Okay.
though, I have a worse card than him, so I'm like right on the cusp of like.
And by worst
being able to
card
run.
is you have a 3080 and I have a half step higher at a 3080 Ti.
Yeah,
So,
so
like,
any
it's-
lower than my card, and like the game's kind of unplayable.
Yeah.
Because that's what people were reviewing it on. They're like, dude, we can't even play this because it's an action game. You need it to run at 60.
Right.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
that's right.
So,
Yep.
yeah, but it's not even that. Like, I could even forgive that if it was like everything else. But the
Yeah.
fact that all I wanted to do was play the game and hunt monsters with my friends.
Right.
And it was such a struggle to join a game with my friends. It's like, oh, well, you actually have to finish this cutscene first. And it's like, oh, you have to sync up and get to this menu and that. It was crazy.
Yep.
It was
Yeah.
insane.
Which is
I have 30 hours in that game, and I finally just hit the point where I'm like, okay, I see the loop. Like I understand what I'm supposed to do now. Like I've kind of mastered the menus. I know where to go for.
Are you coming around on it then?
I need to play with someone. I gotta play with someone.
I mean, you're a Diablo guy though. This is like up your alley. Where it's
Diablo
like, oh,
is
just
so
wait,
much better.
just wait, dude.
No.
It's you're gonna see the light.
Diablo's fun from the start.
Yep.
Well,
And
that's
you
what I
can
was
play
saying.
together.
Diablo, we joined the game.
Yeah.
We played the campaign together.
Yeah.
It counted for both of us. And then we got to the loop. So like at this, it's like, nope, you got to play it by yourself, but your friends can come in and help you,
Yeah.
but only in certain sections. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
well, when you're talking about games where friends can just hop in and play and have a good time, and I don't care if you give me crap for this.
No, go
we
ahead and
go.
say it.
Evil West is
Yep.
one of the most fun games I have ever played with a friend, and Sean and
What game is that?
It's on
It's-
Game Pass. I told you about it.
it's unreal. The
Tell me about a lot
graphics
of
are
games.
good.
That's true.
It runs good. It's so stupid and over the top with the vampires and like an alternate history type thing,
Yeah.
but it is so much fun. We crushed that in like 3 nights, playing up till like 4 a.m, like when we were kids, right? Ty?
Yeah.
Like it was amazing. That game is completely underrated. It needs the respect it deserves. I'm sorry, I get all fired up.
No, dude,
it's-
plug it, man. I love it.
So when I hear like the Monster Hunter and like, oh, like joining, there's some issues and stuff, like,
Yep.
okay, well, Evil West didn't have any issues like that. It's an amazingly fun game to play, and it didn't catch on.
Yeah.
And to me, that's such a disappointment because those guys deserve to put out a game that wasn't broke day one, because we played it day one, that plays that well, is that
Yep.
stupid fun from like when we were kids.
Yeah.
And I miss it. And the other game that is completely underrated, or maybe not, it got good reviews, but I don't know how many people played it, was Brackle. I think it's called Brackle.
I think you were telling me about that one.
Dude, it is unbelievable.
It's on Game Pass, right? Because you like.
It is, but it might not be anymore. If,
Okay.
Tyler, you would appreciate the art style because it looks like a kid's game, but
Yeah.
it's not. Like, oh my gosh. And it is so fun to play. And and I know this because my dear sister, who I love, Autumn, I'm
Yeah.
sure you're not listening to this, nor will you, but she's amazing. Well, it's about a brother and a sister. And like that instantly grabbed me, and it runs amazing. It looks amazing. And it's something that you would never expect, Tyler. You'd be like, Justin wouldn't
Yeah.
play this because it's like kind of cartoonish. Played it, loved it, and played it again because it was so.
Is it
magical.
like a platformer or what's?
That's a great question. At parts, it is.
Okay.
At parts, it is a platformer, but it's very story driven, and it's
okay.
extremely, what's the word? Visceral. out of nowhere. Like you think it's like a cartoon, and then there's like this pig butcher that's like killing kids, and
Oh my gosh.
it like it grabs you out of nowhere.
Wow.
But the love story between like how much the brother would do for his sister, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's me. Like I mean, I would do that for you guys but if you have that connection with a sibling, you get it. And the guys who did this, I think they're from Sweden or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
What an amazing job.
There's a
And
lot of great developers in those Nordic countries.
I ask anyone listening and you, Jonathan and Ty, just play it one time. It's not long. You'll get through
What is
it.
it called, Ty?
I'm looking it up. It's not coming up. I'll have to take a look at it.
And I say
Okay.
Brackle because that's, I think, the name of like the poison that gets into everything, but it might not be called that.
Yeah, I'm looking at some weird anime porn starting to pop up. So I'm just going to stop doing that. That can't be that game. But
I wish I would have.
You might be trapping us.
yeah, it might be.
Might be tricking us.
This
No,
is
I'm
not a
just
Sweeney
This
Todd
is a long,
situation.
Not a
long-term
Sweeney Todd?
Sweeney Todd.
No.
yeah.
kidding. What is this Sweeney Todd thing? I don't know if I know this reference.
Justin asked me if Sweeney Todd was good. I was like, yeah.
Like the musical?
Yeah, the movie with
The
Johnny Depp.
the movie.
Yeah.
All right.
It's
well,
not.
Here's the full
like-
story. And it was me with a bunch of friends, including like my hockey buddies, which, yeah.
Here
I'm
we
like,
go.
hey, Ty, we want to go watch a movie. We know you're like into like all the pop cultures. What's good out there? And Tyler, knowing that this was a musical that we would all hate, he's like, buddy, go see Sweeney Todd. It is amazing.
Oh, you went to the movie theater?
Yeah, I feel like over the years it's been like I don't know. I don't think it was like malicious. I don't know.
That's back when $1 meant something.
Yeah, well, that's fair. No, I know. I just,
Yeah, right.
oh.
And like my hockey guys were like, hey, Justin, your cousin said this was good. When does it get good? I'm like, he wouldn't lie to me, guys. Like
Oh, no.
I multiple times were like,
went to
hang
bat
in there,
for
boys.
him.
Hang in there. It's going to get good. Tyler said it's good. It's going to get good. And then
In front of his hockey buddies, dude.
Yeah, I don't think. I wish we could go back in time and see it because it's like I don't know if I was. I won't think I was like trolling. It wasn't like a troll era back then. I think it. I would
think
say
you might have known what you were doing.
no.
a little bit.
If I had to guess, I mean, this was when did Sweeney Todd come out? This was like 20
2012.
years ago. Yeah, like
More
I
than
would
that?
say it was closer to like I wanted to seem cool. I guess, and it was just like, oh yeah, you know, like and it wasn't cool.
I walked out of the movie theater just like,
Well done.
great job, Tyler.
Well done, Tyler.
Outstanding. And I called him, right? I
You
called
did.
you.
You did.
And
You
there
did.
was a giggle on the, when he picked up, there was an instant
There
giggle.
was.
I just okay.
You're like, hey man, didn't
know.
enjoy Sweeney Todd? I'm like, no, Ty, I actually didn't. It actually sucked. And it was a musical.
And now I'm
And
sleeping
now
with
my
one eye
whole
open.
hockey team calls me Sweeney Todd.
It was Vern. If you know Vern, he's the last person that would like a musical, and he's like,
Yeah.
what? And my brother was there too.
Yeah.
So Josh was
So
like,
was the problem you didn't know it was a musical?
we had no clue.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was it.
I think you also
Yeah.
knew that they didn't know it was musical.
Buddy, it was 20 years ago. I don't know.
I'm not responsible
Hold on.
for
I gotta
It
I'm
was
see
so-
when it came out.
It was just so well played,
Yeah.
and we all just bid on
Did
it.
you ever get him back?
No.
Oh,
That's
never?
what I mean for the past. So 2007.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is
So not quite 20 years,
crazy
but it's
long
yeah.
ago.
But for
It's
the past
almost.
15 years, I've been sleeping
there.
with one eye open. I'm just waiting.
I respected the play
the
so
long
much.
game.
He doesn't deserve to get anything back because it was
Really?
so well played.
Was, but
I'm like, hey, he got us. Like,
yeah.
The getting the back is like every game that I'm excited about. It would be like, oh man, Anthem! I can't wait for that one. That's going to be
man,
great.
does that one hurt?
Just
I really thought that was going to be the game.
Anthem.
Yeah.
played really well.
Oh, no.
It played good.
It
It's cool.
didn't do well, though.
No.
No.
Terrible.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So,
Sorry, guys.
Dragon Age W, Avowed L.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's just me. Again, I am not your typical gamer, and I understand I'm harsh. I get it. But boy, Avowed was.
Well, I think it's a good perspective to have, right? Because I think if you looked at the landscape of the industry, a lot of people are getting older, obviously, right? Like that subset of gamers. So it's like they don't have as much time. They just want something that works. They want something quick. Like everything you said, like
Yeah, but that's not profitable. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like largely companies don't care.
well, if you want to absolutely maximize your profits, you do a games for service model. You're just Fortnite, and
Yep.
you get all the kids to steal their mom's credit card. Like that's, but that, you know,
Well, the crazy thing that companies are saying now, because it's just the buzzword of companies, is fewer but better. Every company says this.
fewer what?
Fewer but better. Right, and it's the design term of like less but better, and it's the whole thing of like we're just gonna do less games, but they're gonna be like big, like just real big bets, like real good. And it's just like you do that, and it tanks, and you have your Concords, and you have your Anthems, and like whatever,
Yeah.
and then you scrap everything else. But all the smaller games, like your what's the one that
Balatro?
Shadow drops? Balatro is a great one.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hi-Fi Rush was super fun.
you play that one?
And like
Yeah.
super
Oh,
unique.
Yeah,
great game.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yep.
so good.
But that
Such a surprise.
and then they
dude.
shut
Right.
them down. Like you
Yeah,
have the
super
Shadow
weird.
of War and Shadow of Mordor, and those are amazing. And it's just like, nope, get rid of them, shut them all down.
Boy, that one hurts.
Yeah, and
Monolith
it's
was
just like-
just
I don't know.
amazing at what they did. And those two games, for me personally, considering that The Lord of the Rings is my favorite movie. I say movie because they were shot all at one setting. So whatever.
Yeah. I
Those
think it's
are-
a fair take. Yeah,
100%, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Well, those games like actually did it justice. And for how harsh I am at grading, for me to be like, these games are amazing, like they kind of had to be, and they were. And to see that group get shut down, that's a tough one. That one hurts.
You want to hear my friend's headcanon for Lord of the Rings?
Let's hear it.
So what I love about those games is that they do it in a way mostly where it could technically be canon. They don't disturb any of the actual like books or anything. So spoilers, I guess, for Shadow of Mordor. Talion becomes a Wraith Knight or whatever at the end, right?
yeah.
His headcanon is he is the guy that's hunting Frodo when he's like hiding under the tree, under the roots. He's the one like searching for him.
Yeah.
Because it's never named.
Sure.
Could be Talion.
It 100% could.
Yeah.
And that would make me enjoy the movies even more than I already do because Talion was awesome. That's
Dude,
a great
Talion's
character.
the man. Yeah.
Huh,
So now I
that's
always watch and be
interesting.
like, oh, there's Talion.
I never,
in my head. My
I never
head
thought of
canon.
that.
Yeah. He's a huge Tolkien guy. So
Yeah.
when he told me that, I'm like, that makes it so much better. Because I love those games.
So
it,
good.
It has maybe my favorite mechanic in all of games. The Nemesis system is so cool. And Tyler and I always talk about this, like, wow, could that not be applied to so many other things? Imagine an Arkham game with a Nemesis system.
Right.
You have this like low-level street villain that you beat up and he goes to jail, and then he comes back with an eye patch, and then he comes back like, and then he just gets bigger and bigger and more villainous and crazy, and it would be so fun.
Yeah.
It'd be so cool, so alive, and it's just a shame they haven't. Because didn't something come out? It's like they patented that or something, and
That's what I read. Yeah.
Yeah.
That they have it for another
10 years, 15 years,
something
yeah.
like that, yeah.
Like they patented the Nemesis
Yep.
system or whatever, which is I didn't know you could patent a video game mechanic. That seems kind of weird to me, but or
That's
system.
the rumor.
It's one of those
Yeah.
things that you can patent stuff, and people do, and like Nintendo did, but no one really enforces that because then it starts getting really like
You're splitting hairs.
every Metroidvania is
That's
suddenly
what I'm
like you
saying.
can't do
It's
and
like,
stuff. Yeah.
oh,
so,
can I not do a first-person shooter
Yeah.
because
Right.
Doom did it first or whatever?
So it's like
right?
people patent, but it's like a live and let live type of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe
Oh,
now
I
that
see what you're
Monolith is
saying.
down, then maybe they
People will do it.
let it go. I don't know.
I'm sure you could like change one, like make one adjustment.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, it's not technically the same thing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I don't know. But yeah, those games were so sick.
Have you done Balatro yet?
No, not yet.
It's on Game Pass.
Yeah, I so
That's
again
up
another
your
one that's
alley,
that's
dude.
on. So yes, that's
Oh my god! Because it's quick. You want a game? You can just you
Yeah.
want to play for 30 minutes. You want to play for 5 hours? You can do it.
okay.
And
Well, that's the
loop
next one
is
then.
so addicting. Yeah. Because
Okay.
you like, I mean, you play cards, like so you
Absolutely.
understand poker hands and all that. Yeah,
Yep.
it's so good.
It just seemed so not me, but if you guys like, I trust you because I'm a very like action-oriented game fan.
Yeah.
I see.
First-person shooter, like we just mentioned, Shadow of War, that kind of stuff. Like that's me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw it, and I did hear your take on it, I'm like, that's awesome. I should give it a try, and I just haven't yet, but I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's so not Justin that I'm wondering if
Yeah.
it will be Justin. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fair. I just think it's for everyone. I just think it's so fun that like anyone can pick it up and just have a good time with it.
You
It's
don't
on
do any
Game
like
Pass,
phone games or anything. Like there's not like a
Nope.
guilty pleasure or just random one that you pop. Yeah. So the nice thing is it's being on Game Pass. just
Exactly.
try it out.
it's
Exactly.
free.
That's
Yep.
one though that I think I would say like you set a timer, give it an hour.
Okay.
But like a full hour.
Sure. Sure.
Better not see that negative less than 1 hour. But if you give it a full hour, I think that's enough time to like see the loop and just be like, oh, I see what they're going for, and then it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier, and it's
Done
it's
because
nice,
I needed a game. I was disappointed in Avowed, and I think is it South of Midnight that comes out next? That
I think that is next. That's in April.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
so. Then I'll do that up until that point because that game I am excited to play. But again, I just haven't been impressed as of late. A lot of these games that are supposed to be amazing that took 5 years to create are just not.
You played Hades?
I played most of it. I guess.
but you played it. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like you experienced it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a good one. Is that on Game Pass?
I think it was at one
Oh,
point.
wow.
I don't know if it is anymore.
I mean, you're going back quite a bit.
Well, I'm just trying to think of like what are the in the past 5-10 years, like what are the games you need to play. Like I gotta stop thinking that everyone's just played all the games. I'm like, oh, this
the
is a
big
great
ones,
game. Yeah. I honestly, I think.
Well,
like,
you have a PlayStation, right? So you've
I
played
do.
God of War and
Yeah. like between Astrobot and Balatro, like that's what you should be. You know, like there you go.
I think Final
Like, that's-
Fantasy is very good.
It's not an adjusting game.
No,
You don't think
I
so?
don't think so.
The remake?
Yeah. Yeah.
Combat's fun.
It's it's
Okay,
not Dragon Age fun.
Wow, that's debatable, but
No, I'm not saying that it's not fun, but I'm saying
Yeah.
it's not like the same kind of fun as Dragon Age. Dragon Age, you're just booting people off cliffs like constantly, and it's just fun.
Right. Yep.
Sure.
Final Fantasy, you're like kind of doing some more tactical stuff and different things like that. You let me borrow Final Fantasy VII
Oh,
way back when I got my first PlayStation, and that was like, so like, which I don't think you never beat that, right? Like you just you
nope.
got it because it was like
Everyone
Well,
did.
the point to do,
Everyone
yeah,
did.
yeah.
Yep.
So I don't even know if you would see the link there, even. But like Final Fantasy's good, but like I wouldn't start with Rebirth.
No,
You know what I mean? Like, I
no,
wouldn't
no.
start
I
in
would
the
start
second
with
one.
the first one. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can buy it both. There's like a bundle deal going on.
Oh, is
like-
there? Yeah.
Yeah, for like 70
I feel like
bucks.
if you're really like needing something, then sure, maybe.
no,
Like, if
you
want,
have
like,
a big
a-
list.
if-
You got a you got a
I
good
do
list.
because
yeah.
And you
I
played
just don't-
Horizon, right?
Yeah.
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 But Velatro and is it V? Like
B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one and Astrobot will be my next two.
Oh, okay. That's
Which
a
one?
good
Which
next
one
two.
do you guys think I should start with?
You could play them both.
Astrobot?
Yeah, probably.
Did you play Spyro when you were a kid?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it gave me Spyro vibes. Just
Yeah.
like platformer, no story really, just like fun levels and
We didn't need a story back then. Like we just
No,
wanted to have
dude.
fun and Spyro.
just save
lot
the
of good
dragons,
memories.
bro. And this one's just like save your bot companion.
It's a kid
same
game,
thing,
right?
Yeah.
Like it's a
Yeah.
kiddie.
but it's good
game.
enough where it's like
Yeah.
Spyro's a kid game,
Yeah.
but it's good enough where it's like anyone can have fun with
Yep.
that
Mhm.
game. You know what I mean? It's just that's what's great about games.
That's what's great about Mario. It's great. Like that's the
Exactly.
Nintendo charm and
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I classify that game. That's what I put it in.
Okay.
It gave me very
Every single
Nostalgia
review
vibes.
is like, oh, Nintendo doesn't own this market anymore.
Good.
And like it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Like somebody
it's
else
very
figured
much-
it out.
Competition is a good
Yeah.
thing, especially in video games. for
Honestly,
sure.
I think it has to be on
Yes,
PlayStation. I think playing Astrobot on Xbox, while still like mechanically fun and good and everything, like if it came out on Xbox, I think it would be a lesser experience because you like just the dumb little like vibrations and the haptic triggers and
Oh,
the
yes.
sound on the controller
Yes.
and stuff like that all is part of the experience, and it just makes it like the most charming thing I've played in years. So
Okay.
Yeah.
since like Mario Odyssey, honestly.
Well, I mean, it has the accolades to go with it. It
Yeah.
won a ton. And
I think it was unanimous this year.
game of the year.
I think because Dice Awards came out, they gave it to it.
Yeah.
It just won everything.
Not Steam Awards, obviously.
Well, yeah, you can't do. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it's not on Steam.
Yes, but no,
Yeah.
I think you're probably right.
I think
yeah.
it was official.
It was
Yeah.
pretty. It's a great game.
well, that's where we'll go next.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Alright.
I don't think you'll regret that.
Sweet. I'm in.
Man, I wish I could experience that game again.
Yeah,
I don't know if you were listening to those episodes, but I was kind of pushing back on him a little bit because the game's so short. It's like 10 hours. I'm like, dude, paying $70 for 10-hour game, man. Like that's not good.
As long as
dollar per hour.
No, I get it, man. Especially with how half baked games are now. But boy, I'm willing to pay $70 for a 4-hour game if it's what it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I still remember the very first Gears of War. I'm like, this is unbelievably amazing. Like I'll pay whatever. I don't care. Just give me a product that's decent and not broke.
Yep, that's what I was telling John. It's like I'm waiting for that next thing that, like, just whenever I got that Xbox 360, I put Gears in, and it was like a completely new experience in gaming. Like that was the next leap. And until that kind of comes back, which maybe it won't. Maybe like we're just at the point where like you just diminishing returns, like you're never going to get that because like games are never going to jump again. But like until that becomes the next thing, like that's why like my card is fine. Like I'm not going to upgrade. I'm just going to wait, I guess.
I understand completely. Yeah.
Especially because like you literally have Dragon Age running very well. It looks gorgeous. It's completely fine. And then you have Monster Hunter, which just runs like hot trash and looks bad.
Yeah.
Like just bad. So I don't know.
It comes down to the optimization of the game.
Yeah.
More than like your
Right.
specs.
It really does.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Yep.
Like some of the PlayStation games are so beautiful, dude.
Yeah.
And do you have a Pro or
No, I do
just
not
the
have
regular?
Yep. Just
I've heard the Pro is pretty good though. For
Yeah.
the games it's like
Depending. Yeah.
yeah, there's like specific games that utilizes like the new technology, the
Yep.
PSSR or whatever. The pisser as they call it. But yeah, it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. I hate that I like Monster Hunter.
You like Monster Hunter?
It's starting to get there.
I told you, so you're coming around to it.
I'm kidding. It's too early to tell. I've only put 30 hours into
Dude,
it, so it's just like gotta wait till you hit.
I gotta
the
get there,
50
but
mark or
I've just
whatever.
been obsessed with Kingdom Come, dude. That game is so
How many hours do you have on that now?
95.
Wow.
Dude, it's taken over my life. It's been a while since I had a game, dude. Like
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate, probably the last one.
That
to
would
do
be
that.
a great game for you too, but I just don't know if that's
You told me to stay
Baldur's
clear.
Gate?
I stay clear.
yeah.
Maybe if he played it with others, like I think that he would actually.
I don't.
You don't
see,
think so?
I think
you
playing
like
Baldur's
just playing
Gate
by
with others
yourself,
is
or
bad.
No, I mean no. I like playing with friends. It's just hard to find a game that does it right. Evil West, and I hate to keep
Here
harping
we
on that.
go,
That was the
dude,
last
yes.
time I had one where Sean and I were like, "This is amazing.
yeah,
We'll stay up to 5. I don't care. I'll stay up till 6 in the morning if I have. Like it was that good.
that's awesome.
We gotta play Evil West.
Yeah, I have to now.
This is
Is
like-
that like your favorite game of all time?
No.
For the past
no.
like 2 years,
but it's
every
co-op, yeah.
family
I see,
holiday, it's like
That's the thing?
It's mentioned.
Are you a Civ guy? Do you ever play Civ?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember playing it when it was like the squares, the tiles that would just kind of hit the combating enemies and like
That's like way back in the day.
100%.
Wow.
Yeah, loved it. And
Maybe we should try it. We Tyler bought Civilization 7 like a sucker.
Like a sucker.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But we do need to play that some way. It came out like not great though. Like bugs, not running well.
Yep.
It's like
Jonathan, I'm to the point where I don't care what the release date is because I know it's not technically a game.
yeah, it's not done yet.
It's
Yeah.
not done.
We were just talking about this. Like back in the day when they were discs, when you launched it, you didn't have a choice.
That's
you
right.
couldn't patch the game.
That's right.
It's like there's
Yep.
too much power now.
The way to patch a game is like you kind of like snuck in an update on like the next batch of discs.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah,
after
yeah.
a
Like
certain
the,
thing,
like
like,
the
you would get,
greatest
like-
hits.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Oh, that's
how you do it.
Yep.
You didn't have that luxury back then.
Hmm.
You had to have a polished game.
That's right.
Now I'm not saying they were perfect. Like you would always find little bugs here and there in games, even back in the day, like exploits and stuff. But man, it's like night and day compared to like these days. It's insane.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. I think it's probably like shareholders and stuff. That's what I boil it down to. Like they're just pushing people. We got to get it out Q3 because that's when we're going to be most profitable, or this and that. I'm sure it's
Well, you
it's all
saw
this back
Discord is
room.
looking at that.
What?
Going public.
Oh,
Please
really?
don't.
Yeah.
That's
Please
not
don't.
good.
That's like every like news thing is like, hey, Discord might be bad soon.
Yeah,
So
Reddit
it's
went
like,
public.
Yeah. Oh, did it? Jeez.
I think so.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh man, we're gonna give our moderators early stock options for all the free labor they've provided
Yeah,
over the years
yeah.
for running our website."
Great.
Yeah.
I have an issue with that, but
Yeah.
that's the way. That's the way it's going.
It is the way it's going. Insane.
Are we getting deep, boys?
Oh,
I was
I
gonna
think
say,
I think
yeah.
we're getting there. I might need another beer for this, but
You want
We
to
can. You want to
take a break?
yeah, you want me to give you some or get you something or
Yeah, I'll take
Or we can take a pause.
Take a beer. Do you need coffee, water, anything?
I will.
I'll get you another one of those, whatever you want.
Yeah, we'll take a break.
All
and
right.
take a
we'll come
break and then we'll get deep.
back. We'll get deep.
All right.
All right.
It's time to get deep,
Yep.
as our friend said. And he brought notes. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited for this segment. I was telling Tyler on the way down here, I don't remember what we were talking about that spurred this whole thing. But like that episode, you were like, oh, I want to come on and talk about it. So
Yeah, 100%. You guys had an episode that got a little bit deep as far as faith is concerned, and how do you know what's real, what's not, what's the truth?
Yep.
Because I think you guys know from my last episode with you, I do not care what the truth is as long as it is the truth. That's all I care about. And I reserve the right, as well as anybody else, to change their mind based on more evidence that comes out in the future. Totally get it. But you guys had some very valid conversation points that I was like, yep, well done, boys, because I think that's a lot of questions that most people have. And it's one that, and Tyler knows me. Jonathan, you're starting to know me, but I don't let things go. So if there's a question, I will research it until I am thoroughly convinced that I found what the truth is. And I don't know, do you guys remember like some of the questions that you had? But
A couple of them. Yeah.
I think
Right.
something that I've been thinking about, right, is you talk about the truth. The truth exists somewhere out there. Like Tyler and I were talking about this. I think it was in the car, but
Yeah.
there is the truth somewhere out there. And like, I think for me, it's a similar goal. Like, I just want to know what is real, what is the truth, right? Because there's one like through line that's what everything is, but like, we're never going to know it, probably. And how could you? So like, you just make educated guesses based on the evidence you have available to you, right?
Correct.
But it's interesting because faith itself, in and of itself, is kind of the absence of having that empirical data.
so remember, I would say that faith is it's belief on what you cannot see, but you know it exists. So when I take a breath of air, I know oxygen's going to go in my lungs. I cannot see the oxygen. So it's not blind faith. Tyler knows me. I am complete opposite of blind faith. Show it to me.
Yeah.
Prove it to me.
Yep.
I'm not going to take your word for it. You shouldn't take anybody's word for anything. You need to prove it to me. And so faith is, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I just have faith. What do you have faith in? I can have faith in that a green Martian is going to come down here and give me $1 million. Is it going to happen? No. It's what is your faith in? It is the object of the faith that makes the difference, not the faith itself. So that object better be real and it better be true, because if I have faith in something that is not real or not true, you're going to get nothing from it. And that was my quest from a very young age. And for those who know, like the Crohn's disease had a lot to play with that. But even before then, my goodness, I came down to the original ask of, okay, what is the truth? Evolution versus creationism. Which one is real? Well, I spent about 4 years-ish and continue to do so on that topic and was thoroughly convinced that I knew intelligent design was absolutely the truth. And there's so much evidence out there, and you're not going to hear it from the mainstream archaeology, we talked about archaeology in the last episode, how
did.
absolute jaded that is. But everything from DNA to, irreducible complexity. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that term.
Is
So
that carbon dated?
carbon
Is that
dating.
different? Yeah.
Did you read my Friday facts on carbon dating?
That was a while ago, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me just,
You still do the Friday facts?
I do.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
about government spending in this one.
Yes, it was.
Oh,
See?
We're very bad at that.
So
yes. Turns out.
yeah, I mean, oh my gosh.
That's a different episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And honestly, most of the stuff I prepared is not on, it was more on what you guys discussed, but just to touch on the whole evolution versus creation.
Sure.
Let's talk about carbon dating, because that drives me insane. And the real scientists that bring this to light are instantly shunned, and I have a list of them, which I'm not going to read off, but I brought a couple notes just because the numbers are so astronomical. So how they get to carbon dating is Earth's atmosphere contains 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 0.06 carbon dioxide. All right, so 0.000765% radioactive carbon is also in the atmosphere, and that is what they base carbon dating on. It's called C14, okay? Carbon-14 is produced by the sun's radiation striking the atmosphere, which is then dispersed all over the world. So it's everywhere, and it's in every living thing. Okay,
Mini chlorians, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. Just to give you an idea, about 21 pounds of C14 is produced each year. That's it. Okay. This form of carbon breaks down over time into nitrogen at an estimated half-life or half rate of every 5,730 years. Okay. So they know the half-life of this C14. That's what they based all carbon dating on. Fair enough. Makes perfect sense to me. So as plants use CO2 to function, the C14 is absorbed by the plant or the animal that uses that breathing mechanism for the oxygen. The assumption is that due to this process, all plants and animals should have about 0.000765%, same percent we just mentioned, of C14 in them at all times. Okay, this all makes perfect sense until we start digging in. Once the organism dies, this percentage of C14 is no longer being replaced, and the difference of what dead remains contain compared to that 0.000765% is how they back out a date in carbon-14. Kind of makes sense? Here's the issue with that. So the assumption is that the C14 within our atmosphere has remained constant throughout all of existence. We already know that's kind of bogus because we know one volcanic eruption can absolutely throw that off, let alone hundreds and thousands within the lifespan of creation. Okay, so the C14 assumption is that it remained constant. It absolutely did not remain constant. Therefore, whenever I'm dating something that I believe is a constant but isn't, I'm going to get wrong results. And we can prove that. And scientists have been screaming at the top of the lungs for this. But if it doesn't fit the narrative, they reject that instead of letting the evidence guide them, not the other way around. And here's a couple of examples. So here's science volume, and a lot of this is dated like to the 60s and 70s, whenever it wasn't so much, repulsed by mainstream. But in 1963, science volume number 141, they carbon dated a living mollusk shell, and it was carbon dated to be 2,300 years old. It's living. We know it. They don't live that long.
That might be.
fair.
It's
The oldest
special
one
mollusk.
ever.
Yeah, you found the one mollusk that
Doesn't work.
Super mollusk.
1971, Antarctic Journal, volume number 6, a freshly killed seal dated to be 1,300 years old. Science volume 242 in 1984, a living snail dated to be 27,000 years old. 1992, two dead mammoths were discovered side by side. One dated to be 16,000 years old. The other was 22,000 years old. There was a professor who resigned, or got fired, I should say, even though he resigned, about coming out and saying, this is completely false. We cannot know that the carbon-14 within the atmosphere was constant throughout all living states and all existence. And his proof is he was one of the scientists that actually studied Mount St. Helens. And Mount St. Helens kind of confirmed that. So there was trees that they knew existed just before it exploded. And then when they carbon dated them, they were millions of years old. Anybody who said anything about this gets completely shunned. I'm just saying the science and logic behind it makes sense. It's just their basis for that is off. Mm-hmm. And if it's something that doesn't fall within that range, they say, oh, well, there is an error and an issue with the dating, and they throw it out. Mm. Now, I'm not saying a young Earth person or versus not. I'm saying the whole carbon dating thing is completely whacked.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of scientists that'll back that as well, but they don't
How do you
seem
think
to be
they
very-
hold on to that if it's so can be, argued against so easily?
If you research it, every individual that has came out against those that speak up about carbon-14 and issues are evolutionists. Every single one. If you lose that timeline, you lose evolution. Does that make sense? So if you...
Everyone defending carbon dating, you're
Correct.
saying? Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense,
Yep.
right? Because
Which is fun. Like
that's how they prove that the Earth is
Correct.
so many years old.
That's
right.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. So I don't know if you got my Friday facts and the postulate trees that stand straight up.
No.
Ignore it about that. Never mind about that.
Sorry.
My point being, there's a lot of evidence that pointed towards that intelligent design is absolutely, in my opinion, again, this is just one person. You go do your own research, but
Yep.
that is the best explanation for what we see. The irreducible complexity is a big one by Michael Behe, who is a biochemist in Penn State, where he's like, this makes no sense. He looked at a cell that had all the components of like a motor, like the flagellum that would swim around. That flagellum had everything from like gears to a rotor, and everything fit perfectly, chemically speaking, in order to get it to function. If one of those parts was misplaced or out of place, the whole organism failed, which means all of them had to be together at the same time. You can't have an evolutionary process. It's called irreducible complexity because it's too complex to just piece together. If you started with one piece, added another piece, the organism already has failed at piece 1 or 2. You needed all 15, and I'm making that up, it was more than that, together at the same time for it to function. And let's keep in mind, gentlemen, that if we are all truly on a random process where there is no intelligent design behind it, chemicals don't care about your feelings, or my feelings. They don't care. They don't care to strive to a greater order of life. They're chemicals. They don't care. So it's not like they can, like you have, and James Tour did a good job of this. He's a chemist for Rice University. If you have 2 chemicals that hook together perfectly to start a protein, they don't know that that's good. They're chemicals. It's not like, oh, sweet, I need to get this one and this one and this one, and then I can form a protein. If it's truly chaos that built it, it's not going to know to grab 5 more other different chemicals in order to create that protein. Does that make sense?
You don't think there's any biological drive, though, innately that wants us to survive? Like something I think of, for example, is like we don't think about breathing or, a lot of the natural body functions that we have, but our body just does it automatically, right? So there's a lot of processes within life that is just super automatic, super built into our biology.
Correct.
So like, do you think that there's any part of that that's like, survival? Like, for example, people who talk about evolution, we have whites in our eyes because they say that people who didn't have whites in their eyes, you couldn't see where they were looking, right? And they were all killed off. So like, throughout the years, that's why we evolved into the current state. So I'm curious what you feel about that. Like,
so why is it good that we're killed off? Who cares?
Well, it was good. I just think for them, it's a defensive thing. And I guess that's more like, they're doing that by choice, but
so like
other mechanics of the body though,
Sure. And I don't disagree that there is such thing as, minor evolution, so to speak. If the finch diagram where only the finches with the longer beak survive because of a drought, there's still a finch. It's still a bird.
Sure.
So
do you think that like fears, for example, right? Like a lot of people are afraid of heights, things like this. Do you think there's any connection there with like survival?
Oh, sure. 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
100%.
So there is some sort of biological drive.
Yeah, it's written within your DNA code.
Yeah,
and that code is so incredibly extensive. So if I come across a beach and I see written on the beach, John loves Mary, I'm not going to say, wow, I can't believe the wind created John loves Mary.
Sure.
Your code in just one cell is a quadrillion times, I don't even know the amount, more complex than John loves Mary. All right, well, any type of code has a code maker. And the DNA, and I believe it was Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates said that the code within a DNA molecule is more complex than any program we could even begin to understand. It's written in there. Last time I checked, random processes cannot have intelligence because they're random. If I took a bunch of Legos and just threw them together and just kept tossing them up, I'm not going to get, take your pick, whatever the most beautiful archaeological.
I just put. I have Legos up there.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like you're not gonna like build that.
You're not gonna get that.
It's
it's equivalent
simple.
of a tornado going through a junkyard and coming up with an airplane.
Sure.
They're literally like your body is incredibly designed to fit perfectly together in ways that are incomprehensible.
Yeah. No, I definitely, especially when you start looking at specific parts of the body, like the one I always am fascinated, like the eye, for example.
Oh my gosh, the rods
it's
and
so
cones
complex and amazing that.
And again, if you're believing in random processes, it doesn't know that that's a good thing to get you to that point. It's just random. There's no mind behind it.
Yeah.
So how do you get logical thoughts out of illogic or just random chaos?
My dad always because like we and obviously I went to a Christian school, so I would say a little bias on what we were taught in this area, where it's like I'm not against the like being taught creationism or being taught like even evolution, but I think it's the absence of the other one that I always had a problem with. So going to Eden, going in like being taught, okay, well, like Adam and Eve, here's this, here's the 7 days here, like, and it was just that. And they never did a good job of like, well, this is just it. And it's just, okay, I understand this is the belief, but if I'm going to say a high school and they're teaching evolution, or they're teaching, you know, they believe a certain way, or they start questioning something that I've been taught, it's like you're not arming, so to speak, or like letting them understand, like, okay, like, hey, here are the kind of refuting evidence, or here are the things that like we question things on. They never did any of that, and I think largely my problem with Eden, my problem even with Northgate, was anytime there was any type of question. I think this is kind of where we initially went, was like it was just kind of squashed. Like it was never like, just faith, or you felt like they almost like made you feel bad for questioning or having it like, hey, okay, just like explain it to me. Like I'm not saying like, oh, I'm disbelieving and I'm going to go worship Satan. It's just like, just give me like something to feel better about it, because the people that are talking to me are hitting me with, because like, you know, if you give me like the C14, here's this and I have carbon dating and I have all this stuff, like all the quote unquote science stuff, right? Which is science, like, and then I come back with no, like, how does that help kids?
It doesn't.
You know what I mean? Like that's my biggest issue.
Every aspect needs to be explored and let the evidence point towards your conclusion. And again, someone might have a different conclusion to me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Look at all the evidence and come up with your own synopsis.
My dad's conclusion, because like I would ask him about this kind of stuff, and his conclusion was like, well, why can't it be both? And it's like, okay, like explain that. And it's like, okay, if certain people are saying, oh, the Earth is, I don't even know what it is, like 6,000 years old, 10,000 years old, whatever. It's not billions or millions. And my dad was like, okay, well, if you believe in an all-powerful God, he couldn't just snap his fingers and like everything happen, like a million years goes by in a second, and it's like, here you go, it's done, you know? Where it's like, it's an interesting thing to think of, like, okay, like here's this tree, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of years old when you like cut it down. Because like we were taught, it's like, okay, well, if you cut down a tree in the Garden of Eden, it would just have one ring. And it's like, but why? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, who says who? Why does that matter? and I really remember these things where it's just like, we were just getting these like weird, like subjective, like no science based, like not even science, like no like fact based, or like here's where it says this in the Bible that I would like. They were just taking these massive leaps, and that's when, especially in like as you get older and you start seeing like kind of like just the world, and it's like I started really questioning that kind of stuff, and that's when like I don't want to say I like broke away from the church. That sounds a little weird, but it's just like if your questions are not being answered by the people that they're saying like, oh yeah, like, you know, come here and, you know, worship with us and really have our faith. It's like, cool. Like not prove it, but like, give me something,
right?
You know? And I think that's the thing that I was always missing personally.
And I think there's nothing wrong with those questions. That's how are you supposed to better yourself or find truth if you don't question everything to some degree? Yeah. Makes no sense to me. And do your own research and see what you come up with. Buddy, I went to Northgate. I understand. Yeah. I had the same experience where I'm like, this makes no sense. You guys are giving me nothing. And then when you do just a little bit of research on your own, you come away thinking like, okay, so why didn't you tell me that? And you find out because they didn't do the research. They simply just blind faith, like we discussed. I'm okay with faith, but faith, you know, if you read the Bible, it talks about faith it's based on something. It's not just blind. It's just you can't see it. Like we talked about the oxygen filling the lungs. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it prompts you. It tells you, go ahead, explore it. Go ahead. Have the questions. Look into it. Knock and the door will be open. Seek and you will find. And I found that to be the case overwhelmingly in a stunning area, which we'll get into. But the first thing was like the whole evolution versus intelligent design. And again, that was relatively quick. I have amazing books that I brought, but
I still have your angel book over there. I have to give back to you. Yeah, your I forget what the title is, but last time you were here,
the Nephilim. Yeah, gotcha. But no, I mean, there's a lot, and I would implore anybody to do their own research. Like Stephen A. Meyer, Dr. Stephen A. Meyer is incredible. He has a book called Signature in the Cell that is just unbelievable how complex the cell is and how well designed it is. It's unbelievable. There's so many of those types of books. Darwin's Black Box is another great one that was actually done by Michael Behe, who did the irreducible complexity. I mean, and those that try to refute it just, it make up your own mind, but it's just so short.
Yeah.
It's just so short. And it's like, oh my gosh, guys, are you looking at the evidence? Or are you trying to push your own religion?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long, or at least it didn't for me, to be like, okay, I got step one. Now, what religion, and I hate the word religion, but what God is it? And that's kind of prompted me into my next step. And that was extremely eye-opening, which, I mean, do you guys want to get into that?
Yeah, get into whatever you want.
Sure.
Man. You have the notes. We're just along
something
for the
that
ride.
we talked a little bit about last time is, obviously there's so many religions, but there's a lot of overlap in a lot of these religions. For example, like a great flood shows up in a lot of different theology, which is very interesting. So again, talking about like the one truth that actually exists, to me, I don't think that's a coincidence that there's so many different perspectives in the world, but there's like a similar type of storytelling that happens where there's a lot of overlap. Now, some are very different as well, but when you get those connections, I think it's really interesting. It's like, maybe there's like something here that kind of connects. Like maybe, everyone doesn't have everything right, but they're flirting with it, I guess. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep. 100% it does. And to that point where there is an overdriving one, I use in air quotes, source that pushes people to beyond their belief into that there has to be something else, is the whole objective. Is there one objective moral that is universal? Like torturing babies for fun is wrong, right? Would we agree?
Yes.
That is Couch Company's
Couch
position.
Company does not
that
condone
you should
that.
not torture babies for fun.
So
Slam dunk.
I feel pretty good about that one.
Yep.
and you think that's wrong no matter what, correct?
Correct.
I feel like we're being set up.
No, I'm just,
Yes.
if there's one objective moral truth, then there's got to be a God, because if we are all just matter to evolve to a higher form, there's really no objective right or wrong. It's just your opinion.
Yeah.
Because what are you basing it on? So Hitler wasn't necessarily wrong for what he did. It's just what he wanted to do in order to...
Oof.
You're saying without morals.
Without
that's what
morals.
it is.
I was going to say, that's the soundbite that we
To me, it's always been, if there's no morality, everything, like you just are this most self-serving person.
Correct.
Right? Because that's all that matters.
What's good or bad is based on you and you
Yeah.
alone. There's 6 billion. How many people are there in the world?
7 billion.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's 7 billion little gods, and whatever they believe, one belief system is not right or wrong over another, because there is no God. There's no one moral truth. It's whatever you believe. And that I had an issue with. It makes no sense to me.
So just to clear it up, you had an issue with Hitler because that is that would be like saying he's right, just like the other person's right, just like the other person's right.
Correct.
Yeah, like if there's no
Yes.
God, it's
Yes.
like, how can I get myself to the greatest position possible?
How can you
Correct.
say it's
And
bad?
period.
Yeah, it's like, who
just
cares?
screw everyone
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
over, just do
Yep.
whatever you want. Right.
100%.
In,
Right.
in a moralless world.
Yeah.
Right. And then people are like, well, it's society that decides right or wrong. Okay, well, who's society? Hitler's or Mother Teresa's? Because they're vastly different. And if there is no moral absolute, one is not better than the
It's just
other.
whoever's
But they're the same
bigger at that
species,
point.
Correct.
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, how can there be such a divergent, path, if you will?
Yeah, and that was another, like, that goes outside of the whole scientific evolution thing. It was more something you can't do in a lab.
Common
but it's-
sense. Like it's just like,
spiritual. I mean, there's a lot of like, what science is that? Like where you study society and stuff.
starts with an E.
Something. There's a study, like you do study that
humanities.
Humanities, sure. But yeah, I mean, you can't study that. But morality is hard, right?
Yeah.
It's
Ethics.
ethics, sure. But yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Like, where does that come from?
Where does
I think
it
that's
come from?
that's one of the biggest questions.
If there is no true moral law, then there's no human rights. There's no justice or injustice. There's no way to measure moral differences. There's no grounds for political or social stances. None, because your opinion is just as good as mine.
But see how, I guess the thing is, though, even morality is vastly different depending on the people that you go with, right? Like, you go to Afghanistan, way different morals than here, right? So it's like, how do you navigate that? And how do you say, like, oh, no, we're, like, Northgate Christians are superior to, you know...
Well, I think, like Justin was saying, there's a fundamental foundation where we can all agree, right, with like his absurd thing. But
it was an
like,
absurd example on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. To point out that like there's a baseline that if you are a sane person, we can all agree on that.
But maybe.
All right,
you don't think so?
So whenever
there
they
are clearly people still very much in line with like Hitler's thoughts and everything. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like,
oh, evil exists.
that's what I mean. So it's like, what is the, like, I would love to understand like the percentage, right, of what that is.
Yeah, but even in
like,
that, like, I don't think the Nazi Party was pro torturing children or babies.
well, depending on the ethnicity of the baby.
I suppose. I mean, I don't know, man. I just think like
I'm telling you, it's
So
depending
then,
on
if that is the case, I don't want to hear one person complaining about them doing it, because they had every right to do it as much as you. If you don't believe that there is a moral lawgiver, then don't complain about it. And I doubt that any rational human being can live that out. They're like, oh, well, I believe that I am my own God, and whatever I want and do, that's fine. And if there is no God, then you are just matter evolved to a higher order. And chemically speaking, you decided to love your wife today. You better hope your chemicals don't change tomorrow. And if they do, and you cheat on your wife, there's nothing wrong with that, because there's no moral law.
Is that it? Does that turn into then morality? It's not morality, but it's more of like a self-preservation, right? Like you wouldn't. Like, you're not breaking. You could if you wanted to. Like, you're breaking the law if you want. Like, you go rob a bank or whatever. But you're not doing that because that's just not in your best interest. So, like, it's one of those, like, I don't know. I could see it where I'm trying to see how I would describe it. But like, same thing with like loving your wife or doing whatever. It's like, yeah, you're doing it just for evolutionary reasons. I guess people could argue.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, no,
You're just doing it on a society. Like, you're evolving or you're preserving yourself within a societal standard.
Right. So that person, if I came up to them and I fought MMA, smashed them in the face and took their wallet, I guarantee you they'd have an issue with that. It's like, well, I'm only living by your guidelines. I'm only living by your guidelines.
Yeah.
So they can't live it out, is my point.
yeah.
They just can't. Now, you can believe that, and that's fine, and that's your belief system, but I would challenge you to try to live that out. You probably don't. You probably have some type of love and respect for somebody within your life that goes beyond the rational mind.
I see what you're saying. Yes, you're saying purely biological, chemical,
Purely
whatever.
biological.
Like it. Yeah, I got you.
Yep. Don't complain about cancer. It's doing what it's trying to do in order to survive. Like, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, well, no.
Why do we get so sad when the dog commercial comes on?
Right.
They play that music and want you to adopt them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And to your point, like over in like Afghanistan, what have you, the vast majority are not like that.
Fair enough. And
The
yeah, I don't
vast
want to like
majority.
just say it's all Afghanistan, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like there are different beliefs in different societies that they would consider like extremely moral.
Do
And
you
the ones
think
that are
that,
oppressed
like-
in those societies are the first ones to tell you that this is BS.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah.
Do you think that those kind of belief structures, like you're talking about with Nazis, for example, does that kind of form its own religion on like false pretenses though? Like, it's kind of an indoctrination in a way where they are substituting these moral truths with these evil things that
For
are kind
sure.
of been pushed on them, right?
But like, isn't that just religion? Because I agree, I don't like that word because I think especially
right. It is, in a way,
here,
sure.
It's turned
It's like a set of beliefs
turned
that's
dirty. Yeah,
taught to you,
right.
and that you have to follow or whatever, like a doctrine. Yeah, I would say that's why I kind of view it that way. It's like
like my big issue with a lot of stuff, and like not that I'm like, oh, I throw the Bible out or anything like that, but and this is one of the things we talked about is like, there are books of the Bible in air quotes that were like omitted from things, right? Which I just don't know all the background on that. I don't know why certain ones were kept and certain ones weren't, and all that other stuff. Whatever kind of collection, but again, it's kind of like it's really describing this narrative, and then you have again the translation going from like all these different like languages and stuff, and getting to where we are, and then you have the translation of the actual like words, right? So like it's translated to English, and then you have every pastor translated it
but it's
differently,
even
and
like
that kind of stuff.
when Moses is getting information from God from the burning bush, you're losing something there. In my mind, it's like, how could you possibly fathom perfectly what God's telling you?
So a couple points to that, if I may.
Sure, yeah.
So as far as the books of the Bible, 66 books in the Bibles, the reason why they were compiled the way that they were all either eyewitnesses or those one removed from an eyewitness. Anything else, first of all, it doesn't hold up to, if you scrutinize it historically, a lot of falsehoods in the Apocrypha, and that's all the books collected that were not included in the Bible. Do your own research. I read them all.
Yep.
I forget how many. Read them all.
Is that what Judaism does? They keep all the books?
No.
Because they have a lot more, right?
They only believe in the Pentateuch, which is the first 5. So,
okay.
But there's way more. Like the Book of Enoch, I think, is phenomenal. And even it was used and quoted to a degree by Christ himself, but it wasn't. There's things in there where you're like, that's 1,000% wrong. But there's some truth in it. But unless it's fully truth, it got pitched. Because and again, it's either eyewitnesses or once removed, and that's it. The Bible is very unique, and we'll get into why it's so unique here in a minute, because I'd love to have that conversation with you boys. As far as translation, God bless the little shepherd boy who threw the rock into the cave and it shattered the pot, because it was unbelievable how accurate the translations are today, and that sealed the deal. That was unbelievable, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and how nothing has changed. The minor differences are like missing what they would consider an apostrophe, or something would be like plural instead of singular, but it made no difference to the translation. And we know when that was written, we know what we have today. It is truly remarkable how much was preserved. So to me, that was the end all as far as
it's fair
finding it. Now, yes, is there some nuances that are lost and I've read them all. It's written in 3 languages. You have Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. Now, I do not read Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic, but I do have the traditional copies of each one of those translated like word for word. And it's hard to follow because of how the English language is. So when they translated it, they did an amazing job of giving you the essence of that scripture chapter. Amazing. To the point where there's almost zero debate as far as the main principle that the writer wanted to get across came across. So yes, do you lose something in the translation? 100%. Do you lose the main point that writer was trying to make? Nope, you don't.
Yeah.
To an amazing degree.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Do you think, though, that there's anything with the idea that the comprehension of it, right, the Word of God, to me, it's unfathomable. Even the idea of what God is, we have a picture of what God is in our mind. It's hard to even put into words because it's just something that's beyond any of our perceptions 100%. Or reality. Yep. Is it possible that we lose stuff there and we're doing our best to get close to what the true word is, but 100%. It's just an impossible feat?
My friends, this is the beauty of how powerful and amazing God is and how extensive his love. We can't even begin to grasp how amazing he is in our current state.
Right.
So yes, to answer your question, 100%. And this is what I love about the Bible, when it discussed like, you know what, heaven's so incredible. Here's my best explanation for it. It's too good for me to even begin to explain to you how good it is because you just can't.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm good with that. I want something to be so amazing that I cannot believe that that exists and that I'm experiencing it. Great.
Yeah.
Now, is heaven real? Is what they're telling me the truth? That's when we get into how do we know it's telling you the truth? How does the Bible set itself above and beyond any other book? I don't know if you guys studied any other religions.
Not in depth.
No, not.
I know
not
a little
to
bit about some other stuff, but not anything.
My
super
upbringing
in-depth.
would have not been conducive to that.
Sure.
Okay.
Is
fair
there any
enough.
other religion specifically that you're talking about? Like,
So I studied 5, like
Okay.
extensively, inside and out, because if I'm going to search out the truth, I better look at all sides to decide what is the best explanation for my existence
yeah,
and what is the best explanation for truth. Okay.
for sure.
So Taoism, Shintoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, and Islam are the 5. Is that 5 or 6? Whatever that is.
That is more than 5.
It's 6. Judaism is basically the Christian Bible, but
It's close.
the Old Testament. So
Right.
it's kind of okay.
Yep.
That was eye-opening to say the least, because I was like, if these are words from God, they better be impressive. They better do something that no other book did. And I read the Bible multiple times over before I started studying those religions just to see what the truth was. And boys, you do not have to get far. And this is just my experience. Somebody could claim differently to be like, oh, that's a stark difference as far as what I can rely on as true and reliable. Just to give you an idea, like, and I wrote some of these notes down just because it has been a long time since I studied these, but Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, there was no such, he didn't list a deity at all. So there's no God in Buddhism at
Right.
all. It's basically like, it's all about pain and like bad experiences, how to overcome that. And his goal was like, you have to just be detached from everything through my 8-way path. So there's like, you
Is
have
that
to do something.
Nirvana
Yeah.
in Buddhism. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like what you're trying to achieve is a state of nirvana.
To totally be detached from everything, therefore you don't feel the oppression and pain of life.
Right.
Be detached from everything, so nothing matters to you, therefore you're free. Like, okay, is there any, can you give me any can you predict the future? Do you have any historical evidence? No? Okay.
Some truth to that, though. No.
Oh, I totally agree.
That-
There's
that
hints
life's
of truth in all of this.
Right.
But I'm going to get to why the Bible is so
Yes,
incredibly
yes.
different. But
Yes, continue,
Hinduism
please.
was wild. I remember reading that in college and like trying to get through it the best I could. And boy, buddy, it was tough. It's all about Brahman, which is like the ultimate God, and all other gods are part of Brahman. And it gets wild and reincarnation to get to this. Again, can you tell me the future? Did you tell me the future? No. Any archaeological historical evidence? No. That's fine. It's a philosophy, and I am fine with that. But if it's truly the way of God and God wants to connect with us, there better be something special about it. Shintoism, Taoism, same thing. It was very spiritual and outside and crazy, mystical. That's fine. How are you setting yourself apart? Can you tell me the future in some way, shape, or form? And
Is Taoism the yin yang?
so Taoism, like they're very similar. One was developed in Japan, one's in China. Shintoism is the worship of spirits associated with like natural elements. There's no single founder. Rituals and practices, you would do these rituals and practices in order to honor that single what have you. But they have the rituals and practices laid out that you were supposed to do. Same with Islam, where you have the 5 pillars. One of them's like the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Yep.
It's things you have to do in order to obtain God, so to speak.
Do they like and because obviously I haven't researched these, like do they do like their version of like effectively Bible stories, right? Because like the Bible is like a historical like hey, here's everything that has happened from in the beginning to like Revelation, right?
The
Like,
future,
yeah. So like do these texts have their version of those type of things as well then?
Hinduism for sure, but
Yeah.
they were so Tyler, like I was like, what am I reading? But yes, they do, but nothing that uses like specific archaeological historically
Like no
based.
family trees.
Right, like
Yeah.
things like that.
Well,
Right.
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like I would argue like the end of the Bible kind of starts getting into that territory, right? Where it's
Revelations
just, like, it's
is
all-
wild.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like
Yeah.
I that was easily my favorite like Sunday, like whenever
I think it's terrifying personally, but
Pastor Boggs was going through that stuff. Like that was some of the best sermons ever. Like he was great. But that's
And
Yeah.
Revelation was intrinsically tied to Daniel on purpose in order for the reader to basically enrapture the Jews, because at the time you still had the Jewish nation that was still like rejected Christ as the Messiah. And John was trying to relate to them using that terminology that was used in Daniel. So you have to keep that in mind. So yes, it sounds weird when you and I read it. When you put the pictures to Daniel, it makes not perfect sense, but it makes sense. It's like, oh, I see what he's doing. He's literally trying to be like to the Jewish people, like, guys, this was it. How did you miss this? This is it. So I'm going to tell you the future, and I'm going to put it in your terminology based on Daniel, because I know you all know Daniel. So a lot of the Revelation ties to the Old Testament, specifically Daniel.
yeah.
So keep that in
It's
mind.
fair. It's fair.
So you do have to know Daniel inside and out to understand Revelation, but it makes sense after that.
Sure, but that's something that he really doesn't go to, like sermon wise. You know what I mean? Like that
Few
wasn't
do.
really, yeah.
And again,
So-
like if and I understand to a degree why I'm not built like the average human being. I'm just not. I don't like vanilla flowery like sermons that are self-help. I
Yeah,
do not care.
right.
Like, tell me the truth, I can handle it.
it's not even what the Bible is really about, right?
Right.
It's
like-
we're really losing the point when you get into like all the lovey-dovey stuff.
Well, yeah,
and-
like David's such a great dude, and then like you start reading about it, and you're like, oh,
the Bible's
wait a minute.
pretty like brutal.
So you murdered this guy while you're gawking at a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and to me, I'm like, okay, if God can use a man like that, he can use me.
Fair enough.
And for me,
It's
that
powerful.
makes me feel better. I don't listen. I'm not perfect. I will never be perfect. And if you strive to be perfect, you're only going to drive yourself insane.
Yep.
I let God and the Holy Spirit do whatever it needs as I grow, but I know I'm not going to be perfect. And if you hold yourself to that standard, you're going to be extremely depressed.
It's fair.
And that's why I love the examples of like a David, because then I don't feel so bad.
I really like Paul.
Yep.
Great redemption arc.
The best, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
So it's like if he can do it,
It's fair.
I got a shot.
Absolutely. And they're all
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
All the individuals used by God, he's like screaming to us, I can use you. Stop trying to be perfect. I can use you. Stop. And it's like, we're the ones that put that burden on us. Like Northgate, sorry, mom and dad. I don't know if you're even going to listen to this, but oh my gosh.
I hope not.
Whatever. I don't. They've changed quite a bit. But the Northgate thing, I went home depressed more often than not. Like, I can never live up to that. Are you kidding me? And boy, what a relief when I truly studied on my own. Now, granted, I was like 5. They're like,
Yeah. Oh, sure.
but when you study it on your own and realize the individuals that God used, and he's like, listen, all these other religions are spelled D-O. You got to do this. You got to do this. You got to do this. And Christianity spelled done. D-O-N-E. It's done. You don't have to try to do all these things. I don't have to do a pilgrimage. I don't have to. It's done. I want you. Are you going to accept me? That's it.
Well, yeah, you do have to accept Jesus.
So the Jesus thing, yes, agreed.
Isn't that Romans? Isn't it pretty clear? You got to accept.
So
him in
remember,
your heart.
Romans also states that even those that have never heard the name of Jesus, that the creation itself has screamed his name, and that God will somehow reach out and rectify that. If you know, like, people back in the Old Testament didn't know anything about Jesus.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That's the question. I mean, that's something that you've posed, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
someone on the
it's-
other side of the world.
It's that people that have not seen
Right.
anything, babies, like
Yeah.
it's just like
Although I will say, Jesus probably one of the most famous people in the world. Like, I think most people in the world know
split history.
who Jesus is. Yeah, it is crazy
sure.
that our entire calendar or
It's-
dating system is based off that.
It was always that question though of like, okay, like, you know, like what's the age? right? Like, is it just purely like your mental thing on like like if you understand and accept Jesus and things like that?
Age of accountability is what they call it. Yes.
And like, I think
It's probably different for everyone, right? Yeah.
from kindergarten on, it was like, okay, like, let's raise your hand, you'll accept Jesus, and you'll do it. And it's like, I know for a fact, like, I knew what I was supposed to do, and like I was doing things and did whatever and things like that, like from kindergarten on. Like, I remember thinking that I was already like, oh, I already did this, but I was just curious where the other kids are going. So I was like, oh yeah, no, I didn't do it yet. But it's like that young, absolutely not. Like, for me anyway. Like, everyone's different, sure, but like, I didn't understand any of that stuff. I just understood what I was being spoon-fed.
Right.
Some of the questions I had for like my youth pastor was like, okay, like, I accept Jesus at this age, and then we grow up, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I reject that, right? So it's like, you could, if you were saved, because the whole thing is like, you accept him in, you're saved. Like, that's it. Like, that's the selling point of Christianity, right? Like, it's a thing. Like, you get it. But then if down the line you're just like, no, I renounce this. I don't want this. Like, are you still saved? And or are you not? Or how? Like, if you accept them, and then suddenly, like, during a portion of your life, you're just like extremely sinful, and you just don't care, and you're just like, you're not necessarily like thinking, oh, I'm renouncing you on purpose, but like, you're just not living, let's say, the Christian lifestyle. And it's just like, they didn't really have answers on that. It's like, don't worry about it, is really the answer that I got for that kind of stuff. And that never set right with me. Talking about, like, I mean, we talk about like the universe and like multiverses, and there's just like weird stuff out there, but like, you know, you talk about the pyramids last time you were here and stuff, and it's just like, okay, like, what if there's other life out there, right? And it's just like, well, that doesn't fit into the, I shouldn't say Christian's narrative, but like the narrative of like my church at that point, like, where it was just like, no, that's not a thing. We're the only ones here. That might be the case, but it's like this very kind of closed off. It's like, well, then why? Like, why space? Like, question mark? Like, who cares? Like, why was this even created then at that point? Because we can't fathom that. And then, like, the other part is too, like, you know, at some point, and even the Catholic Church is like this too, to some extent, where it's like, you just change with the times to keep the people involved. Yeah. So it's like, you're very, you know, say what you will about Northgate, but like, for a time, they were very strict on like, this is our beliefs. Take them or leave them, whatever, but like, this is who we are. And to some extent, I respected that, because it's like, okay, well, like, at least you know what you were getting. But then things started getting a little gray, and, you know, like, you start talking about like LGB stuff, right? And you start talking about like other things where it's like, oh no, it's hard stance back in 97. Now it's like, you know, we love everybody and we accept. It's like, okay, like, they're hypocritical in some way, or kind of like fudging beliefs in other ways, or just kind of just not talking about it because they can't afford to lose followers, or they can't like see, like, be canceled, so to speak, within like social media, because social media is such a big thing now. And it's like, at that point is when I start having an issue with, let's call it like religion, or specifically a church, or specifically that kind of thing, where it's now not about God and religion and your connection with a higher power, intelligent design, or anything like that. It's a business, which I'm not naive. I understand a church is a business, non-profit business, whatever. But like, that's when I start having an issue. I'll get off but those were my kind of main things.
I would never base any type of religious system based on the human beings that have perverted it over time.
Yeah.
I would go to the original source. And I'm not saying Northgate perverted it to some degree, but
right.
I am saying that when I studied Islam, I didn't base Islam based on terrorists who flew planes into a tower.
Sure.
I based on the source itself, not people's version of it or perversion of it, ever. So you have to go back to the original source. That's why, you know, and Christ even mentioned this, where he talks about the wheat and the tares. And that parable is it's so good, because it basically states, hey, these weeds are going to look just like the wheat. They're indistinguishable. You won't be able to know the difference. And that's a lot that we have seen in the church. The church has done horrible things throughout time. Well, if I'm Satan and I want to pull as many people away and destroy them as best as I can, I'm going to attack the church in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to look just like it, but I'm going to pervert it a little bit and a little bit and a little bit until it's so far from the truth. And that's exactly what he warned against. You're not going to know the difference. It's going to look just like the wheat, but it's actually bitter weeds.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, do you want us to go harvest it? And he's like, absolutely not, because if you pull out some of the weeds, you're going to take the wheat with it. Like he loves you too much to have you wrecked by having some of these other ones like ripped out, because you're going to get ripped out with it because you're invested in them. Mm-hmm. And again, I really do, like, I can't stress enough how important it is to do your own research and don't take somebody's word for it. And Tyler, I was in the same boat as you. I'm like, this is ridiculous. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't seem right. Seems legalistic. And then when you do the research on your own, you see that he warns against it. And I'm not saying Northgate was like, especially Jesse. Jesse is my boy. Jesse is the most amazing individual.
Yes.
But some of the ones before him, I was like, what is going on?
It just felt off. You know what I mean? And again, it's like, if you were to voice these things, it has to fit in this nice little box and it has to do this thing. And it's like, that's not what the Bible was like when you actually start like reading it. And it's not like, and maybe it is like, oh, you were kids, you couldn't handle this or whatever. But like, at some point, like you could, or you could at least like say, hey, this actually does open up. You're not either not ready, you're not old enough for this yet or not. But it's just like, no, this is it.
The Bible does not pull punches, because it can't be the word of God if it's not true. So it'll just tell you the truth. Good, bad, or ugly.
The world doesn't pull punches either, right?
That's right.
It's a reflection of reality.
That's right.
What I will say as well is it makes logical sense that these organized religions function the way they do. Like, they don't have perfect histories, far from it, like you mentioned. And the Bible states we're fallen creatures, right? Mm-hmm. So logically, if we're fallen creatures and then we're making these organizations, obviously there's going to be situations where we go off on the wrong path, which is actually why this is going to be probably controversial, but it's a belief I hold. I really disagree with Catholicism on this fact, because I don't think any one person is chosen by God post Jesus, because we're all fallen in sin.
Yes.
So you're telling me that I have to listen to this one person who's making all these decrees because he has a direct pipeline to God. That's why, Protestantism was started in the first place. It's like, no, this is like, we have a direct line. Right. That's why I gravitate much more to that than Catholicism. It just doesn't make sense to me. If the premise is we're all in sin, we're all on the same playing field.
Yep.
Nobody's above anyone else.
Yep.
And to me, maybe I'm just like ignorant to Catholicism. That's totally possible, but it seems like there's more of a hierarchy there that I just don't jive with.
Jonathan, you hit it right on the head. Couldn't agree with you more.
I nailed it to the door.
100%. Nice little Luther reference there.
There you go.
Buddy, you're 1,000% right. And if you research Catholicism, again, I know a lot of Catholics that are wonderful human beings. There's no question they believe the right thing.
Yep.
I totally get it. The origins of it and how they rose to power, they wielded their influence of having a direct line to God in order to better them.
They used to sell penances.
Yep.
So you could get to heaven.
Yep.
That's insane.
That's why you have to go back to the original source.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why it specifically outlines that the temple where it had the large curtain that was torn in two as like a slap in the face of the Sanhedrin and all the other religious leaders. You are not the intermediate anymore. It's done. When God looks at you, assuming that you are like, yeah, my sins are forgiven. That's awesome. He looks at you as an equal. You are inheritant of God. Like, you are a son of God. I don't need priests anymore. I don't need any of that. That's why the curtain was torn in two, to be like, it's done. Mm-hmm. It is done. I just want you. That's it.
Right.
I'm not into your sacrifices or your must do. I have to do X, Y, and Z in order to find favor with God. I'm done. I just want you. And for some reason, legalism continues to hold on, especially within the Catholic Church. It's done. It's paid for. You don't do anything. Come as you are.
Yeah, that's how I interpret it, at least.
Sure.
Personally. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. So if you, just to go back on like when I was studying all this, if you guys want to dive in a little bit into like what makes the Bible so different, because it explicitly says that research me out, and it promises that if you do such thing, you will not have a question. Like you'll have a question within the Bible, but as far as is it reliable? If you do the study, you won't, which I did. And there's two main, there's a ton, but there's two that I prepared for tonight because I don't want to go like 9 hours. But the two are the archaeological evidence and history that the Bible presents is just so spot on. And it's unbelievable. And then the largest one is prophecy. A quarter of the Bible is prophecy. And it flat out says like, hey, if you claim you're the word of God, tell me what the future is going to be. And none of these did it. None. Like not even a guess. Like it's not even close. And I'll just give you a couple examples on each side and then we can go off. But like the history of the Bible is so incredible, whereas archaeology just continues to uncover more and more and more. And I'll give you two of my favorites. One of them is the walls of Jericho. We all learned that when we were in Sunday school. Well, that city was found. And what they found was just unbelievable because if you read the story, it talks about that they marched around the walls and then the walls collapsed so they could come in. And okay, well, when they found the city, what they found is that the walls for the first time, and they never found another walled city like this, and yet to this date, her name was Kathleen Kenyon. She was an archaeologist, a British archaeologist, and she was shocked. The walls were collapsed from the inside out, making a perfect wedge for them to just walk up and in. She's never seen it before, and she's studied multiple walled cities. Then it gets even better because the Bible talks about the one prostitute that was like, hey, I believe you guys. I'll help you. And they were like, yep, thank you. You will not, no harm will come to you or your family. There is one section of the walls that were not pushed out, and that's it. And the one section was like a room that they would attribute to a poorer class. And that is it. It's literally her house is the only part of the wall that did not collapse. Then it gets even better. It talks about that when they did this, it was during the time of storage of grain. They found tons and tons of these pots filled with grain. Like it all lined up, as crazy as it sounds, like perfectly. And it was just unbelievable. This is like, I have a list here. And guys, I have books. I think I counted before I came, 30 some books that are all just based on archaeological evidence found that only support the Bible. I brought like 4 of them, but I'm not going to bore you with that. But they're awesome. There's pictures and it's just unbelievable. So like Jezebel's seal, Isaiah's seal, this is all things they found. Hezekiah's seal, Hezekiah's tunnel, which is an amazing story. Hezekiah is my boy. That's like one of my favorite characters in the Bible. The seeds of Lachish reliefs, the Ekron inscription, Herod's tomb, this Temple Mount sifting project, which has been put on delay, but that's when they were literally going through the rubble on the Temple Mount, coming up with all kinds of artifacts that absolutely lined up with exactly what the Bible said. It's overwhelming evidence. No other book does that. The other aspect is that prophecy, and like that's the biggest one. Let's just be honest. Like that's it. If you can tell me the future, I promise you I'm gonna listen to what you have to say. And it's done that to a degree that's just unbelievable. And two of my favorites, I'll just give you two. One of them is King Cyrus, which 100 years before he was even born, God's like, Isaiah, I know you guys are getting crushed right now by the Babylonians. I'm gonna raise up King Cyrus. He didn't know who King Cyrus was. He wasn't even born yet. He told the nation that was going to rise up at the time. That nation was absolutely nowhere. It was nothing. And that's the Medo-Persians. And he's like, he's going to come. He's going to help you guys out. He's going to rescue you. Just sit tight. So much so that when King Cyrus actually did exactly as the Bible said he was going to do, one of his generals went into the library and found Isaiah where it lists King Cyrus by his name, knowing that was done prior to, because it's dated, his birth. He brought it to King Cyrus. Is like, can you believe this? Like, you're literally listed in it. And he's like, he got blown away. So much so they allowed the Jews go back to their land and build the temple. And that's why if you guys see, whenever Trump in his first presidency, he was basically going to help them build a temple, so to speak. So they developed a coin that would get you from the train to the temple. King Cyrus was on one side, Trump was on the other side. Now, it didn't come to fruition, but my point being,
oh man, okay,
it's things like that is just, and it's all through it. Like I said, a quarter of the Bible is prophecy, and I have a book that literally goes through every single prophecy. It's about that thick.
To play devil's advocate.
Yep.
Are there books then that are the opposite of saying like, oh, hey, here's everything wrong with the Bible? I would have to assume that, right? Like,
oh yeah, 100%. So if you get the book called this book refutes those books, it's just easier that way because there's so many disputing voices. It's rather when critics ask and when skeptics ask.
Okay.
They go through all of them. And it's funny, even like the time where they're like, well, Nazareth, the city of Nazareth, they're like, we've never found it. Well, just because you haven't found it doesn't mean it exists. And by the way, they did find it not too long ago. But there's nothing like the Bible goes into specific kings, specific rulers. They nail the dates, they nail the individuals. And the more archaeology catches up, the more that it displays that what the Bible said was true. Even, the writing on the wall story, Belteshazzar, they found a relief that literally explains that. It gives the name of the individual, which was I think it was his son or grandson that took over while he went off the war. It explains that this individual had the same, Belteshazzar, I believe his name was, the same power.
Balthazar?
Yeah. It was like his son or whatever. Power as the king went off to war. Like that's literally what the Bible stated. So just because they didn't find evidence of it, there's so much evidence that has been found that I'm willing to bet the rest of it's out there if we didn't uncover
I'm not saying, because it's like, oh well, where's this part? It's like okay, like if you're missing something where like other cities have been unearthed, like
correct,
sure, like that makes sense.
The Pool of Shiloh, the gentleman who found that, the archaeologist that found it talks about in the Bible the steps that lead up to it, and it gives like almost distances to where it was. So he just used the Bible like, oh, it says it's this far from these steps that we found. Let's go. And sure enough, they found the Pool of Shiloh. Like things like that. And again, I have over 30 books on this, but I brought some that are like my favorites, but I'm not going to pull them out. But they're awesome, which I thought was kind of impressive. The prophecy is what sets the Bible apart. No other book tells you what it does and lives up. And Tyler, you might have known this one, but the Daniel prophecy that states the specific day that the Messiah will enter Jerusalem, that's impossible. Like how do you, and it did. It gave the exact date that Christ would enter as the Messiah. And I mean, I'll read this to you real quick. It's very short, but the book of Daniel, it lays out an interesting prediction that relates to the quote unquote anointed one using a Hebrew numbering system that groups years into units of 7, and 7's important to the Jews because that's how many days God used to create it, so it was sacred. Just like we say a dozen, they use 7 like that, so keep that in mind. He makes a bold claim. He says, and I quote, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens, and that's basically 7 times 7 plus 62 times 7. That gives you 483 years. Okay, so there was a mathematician who discovered this. He was Scottish, which
nice
props. But he's like, I wonder if this is right. Is that accurate? So he corresponded that 483 years in 2 days. Now, keep in mind they used a 360-day calendar, not 365. So when he did all the math, and it's not hard math, it was 173,880 days from the time that there was that decree to go rebuild Jerusalem to the Messiah. And he's like, oh, do we know when that decree was? Well, absolutely. There's multiple evidences, including I forget which relief or which clay tablet, it states when this King Cyrus, was it King Cyrus? I'm almost positive it was, would allow them, or I'm sorry, Artaxerxes was the king, to go rebuild Jerusalem. We know that date. So then we have the starting point. If you count out that 173,880 days, you can actually get to the exact date of when Christ was going to, or the Messiah was going to return to Jerusalem, and that's March 30th, 33 AD. And that is the exact date that was recorded by multiple historians, including Josephus, of when he returned. So whenever the story talks about Christ like weeping when he was coming in riding on a donkey, it's not because like he's like, how did you miss this? How did you miss this? It was given to you by Daniel by the day. How did you miss this? Because they were all expecting a savior from political strife. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, I'm not here for that. I'm here to save. Like, this was the sacrifice that was foretold since day one when it says he will crush your head to the snake, the serpent. This is it. And Daniel told you the exact day I was coming in and you missed it. And by the way, not all missed it. There was a large movement that knew that, but the vast majority did. And that's why he was weeping. So things like that, when you have something that was written thousands of years before it's going to happen, it nails the day, I'm going to pay attention to you. And that's just one of many. Sorry.
Happy Lent, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
We're in that season.
So as far as then, because it's like where we're at now, it's like, okay, like here's all the historical evidence. And then like future-wise then, like that's always the big thing, right? Like when is the apocalypse happening? When is the rapture happening and stuff like that?
Yep.
But then is that just, you think that it details that? We just haven't figured it out yet?
So it says no one knows the day or hour,
right.
But you should know the season. And the season started whenever the Jews got their land back on May 14th, 1943?
I'll take your word for it.
It's Friday, man. My mind shot. That was the first sign. So
wasn't it after World War II?
Yeah, it's not.
So it'd be like
1948. Sorry.
Oh, 48.
14th,
Yeah.
Yep.
45 is when the war ended, I think.
Yes, you were correct.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's when my dad
I was
going
to say 43, not a great time.
No,
bad time for the
bad
Jews,
time for everyone.
Yeah. My mind shot.
Anyway, so what does it mean by the season then?
So we're
in the season.
Yeah, but again, remember that doesn't mean anything as far as start looking for these other things to occur. No one knows the day or hour, so it speaks. But I mean, everything it's kind of nailing. Like it talks about there's going to be a cashless society. Well, we're pretty darn close to that. It talks about a one world government, which we all know that people have been pushing towards quite extensively. It talks about an alliance between Turkey, Iran, and a few others, which Russia was one of them. They're all coming together. So like we're seeing the season, but no one knows the day or hour, but it specifically mentions this so that you know, hey, like I'm not full of crap here. Like heads up. Mm-hmm. So that could be like a whole other.
Yeah, and like it's weird because we have like this small snapshot because like I remember whenever the Left Behind series were coming out and that was like a big thing. So like everyone was,
just
like
gonna bring that up. Is that when like because Jesus comes back and then there's like some people that are left behind? Is that what that's about?
Well, the rapture happens. Jesus did not come back yet in those.
Oh,
that was always
misunderstanding that. I thought Jesus comes back.
The rapture happens, and then when Jesus comes back, it's like, oh yeah, everyone else that stayed around, like now you have you can't refute that. Like he comes back and it's just like, oh yeah, you're right. Like whoops.
Yeah, but don't they leave like some people
bow and tongue confess? People that weren't saved. So everyone that was saved was, again, I'm going out by Left Behind stuff. Were raptured. Now, that was a point of contention. The two main points of contention I remember at church was it actually 7 days or was it much longer for creation? And they were like actual like 24-hour, 7-day thing, and people argue about that, which I always thought was super silly. And then that was the other one is the rapture on, do people get raptured before or is it like, because I think there's a second rapture too. According to the Bible,
it gets confused. There's two that get confused. One's the second coming, one's the rapture. The rapture, he never steps foot on this earth. The second coming is when he actually does come back and like sets everything right.
Right.
So the rapture, he does not. The second coming, he is here physically on.
And the rapture is first.
So
but the people were saying like there was a sect, I guess, within the church, which I think got stamped out. Believe that we would, even if you were saved, you'd still go through the rapture.
Correct.
Yeah.
Post-trib versus pre-trib.
Yeah.
Whatever. But you are correct. That is the big debate. I have my stance on it. I have all the evidence to prove it.
You pre or post? Where you?
I am. Fallen? I am pre.
Yeah.
and I think it makes perfect logical sense, and we can get into that at another date.
Sure.
Because
Okay.
that is an hour conversation. But it's, to me, it's
Yeah.
so
Fair enough.
refutable. But
Yeah.
Cool.
so just to kind of like, so when I did all my research and looked into this, it's like, okay, so the Bible's pretty remarkable, but what about like Christ himself? Like, who was this person? Like, does that make sense? So just to give you an idea, it's debated, but in the Old Testament, there's over 300 quote unquote prophecies that talk about the Messiah. And it's like, well, that's pretty remarkable. And Christ hit them all. And you can look them at yourself and you can decide for yourself. But there's a guy, his name was Peter Stoner, and that's how I know his name, Ty.
Nice. Yeah, there you go.
But he's a world famous was a world famous mathematician. So he actually did the odds of what would a person who lived 33 years roughly be able to hit, like what's the percentage of him hitting just some of these, not all 300, but just some of them. So he did this, and he started with just 8. So if someone hit 8 of these Old Testament prophecies, what does that equal to? So here's percentage-wise and odds-wise. It's as if you took the whole state of Texas, filled it up 2 feet of silver dollars, paint one of those silver dollars, throw it in there, blindfold yourself. The chances of you picking that red one that you painted is the chances of someone in 33 years fulfilling 8 of the 300 prophecies. And that blows my mind. And they had other mathematicians that are like, yep, that's right. Then he's like, well, let's just do because he looked at what was the bare minimum of the prophecies, because some of these are debated if it really meant Christ. I think it did, but whatever. What if they just did 40 of them? And the odds of 40 of them being fulfilled, and I have to read this because it's so long, it's 1 in a trillion, 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 trillion.
So explain that. Just the fact that a person just did them because they didn't have the words, they wouldn't know, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so it's insanely accurate. It talks about where he was going to be born. It talks about his suffering.
Okay, so things that happened even when he couldn't have
correct,
had a checklist and was just stone tablet of all right, I'm gonna feed the 5,000 a day. Just
even
that was
he
prophecy,
knew
but,
the Old
yeah.
Testament, but even if he did, it's
Right.
you can't. It says that he's going to be bought for silver, and it even gives you the amount of silver he's going to be bought for. He can't control somebody else's.
That's what I'm
bribe.
saying. Yeah,
Does
so
that make
it's not
sense?
even necessarily it's surrounding things. It's just other stuff that happens that involves him too.
When God does something, he does it to the point where there should be no question.
Sure.
Now,
Yeah.
you have to do your research, and if you don't, you're going to whatever. But he's not going to leave it gray. And it's insane. I have a book just on that. And I think it only goes into the top 150 of the 300 and some. But there won't, he doesn't do something to make it kind of questionable. It's boom. Here it is. So then, once you look at that, you're okay, the Bible's extremely reliable, but what about Christ? Did he actually raise from the dead? Shouldn't there be evidence to point towards that? Shouldn't that literally be a defining moment that is remembered for the rest of history? Well, yes, I would think so, right? When we agree, and we do see that, and just starting with history, it did split history. He was so influential that we went from BC to AD. It split history. But there's more to it than that. And I'll return to my notes because there's so much, it's ridiculous. I'll just try to highlight some of them. So there's a lot of text outside of the Bible. A lot of people are well, the Bible is verifying the Bible. There's tons of text outside of the Bible that it is indisputable that a man named Christ was born, lived the life that the Bible stated that he did as far as where he was located and was crucified. And there's a lot of that. There's Tacitus, who is a Roman historian. And Tyler, you'll love this name of the book. It's the Annals, Book 15.
Nice.
It's your favorite book, buddy.
Yeah.
And here's what he stated. He said, Nero fastened the guilt and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations called Christians by the populace. Christus, who is Christ, from whom the name has its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius, which he nailed that, at the hands of one of our procreators, Pontius Pilate, and had the most mischievous superstition thus checked for the moment again broke out not only in Judea, the first source of evil, but even in Rome. Now remember, it's written from a Roman, so he's like claiming that this was evil because it literally changed Rome. Like you can't change Rome. It would have been extremely easy to simply produce the body. And I find it fascinating that the Bible, well, history and God planned it to the point where Joseph of Arimathea, who is a rich man, literally is like, you can have my tomb, because he believed after seeing all the miracles that he did and everything. But history, God planned it that way because everybody knew where that tomb was. Like tombs, a rich man's tomb is not something that went unnoticed in that time. Everybody knew where it was. If he did not rise from the dead, like he claimed he was going to do before it even happened, so he predicted it, you could have just produced a body. Rome wanted to squash this as quickly as possible because they're already having issues with the Christians believing this and not following Roman ways of life, because they're like, I'm not going to bow down to you. You're not a god. This guy did miracles. He was loving. He was kind. There wasn't a racist bone in his body. He said he's going to raise from the dead. He raised from the dead. There's over 500 people that saw him at one time and thousands over his 40 days before he ascended. Okay, if you wanted to crush that, simply produce the body. They didn't, and that's why it was so powerful, because it was an easy fix. This was not something that caught people by surprise. Christ was like Taylor Swift. Like he was the bomb, and everybody talked about him. Everybody knew about him. This is why they wanted to crush this as quickly as possible, and they could not do it. So I mentioned Josephus, and he was a Jewish historian. In the Antiquities of the Jews, he mentions Christ all the time. He talks about him going through the cross and death, and that Christians believe that he raised from the dead and that Rome couldn't get it under control. Again, it would be an easy way to squash that, produce the body. And a lot of people are like, well, did he die? Maybe he like survived it. Okay, so I did one of the most depressing researches of my life when I researched Roman crucifixion, and it was just absolutely horrific. And no, he did not survive that. I mean, the flogging alone was brutal. And a lot of people say like, oh, they use like sharp bones, and on this type of execution, they did not. They used metal balls because they wouldn't go that deep. The balls would prevent it from going that deep. So they wanted to keep you alive as long as possible to suffer the worst torture as possible. Mm-hmm. The balls did that. Then when they strapped you to the cross, every time whenever they would nail you to the cross, the Romans were extremely good at prolonging this. They made sure they hit the nerves within your wrist. So every time you would move, that pain would jolt you awake. So you could not pass out from your pain. This is how sadistic they were. Same with the feet. You would have to push off the feet in order to breathe. And then that's the only way. Your body would collapse on itself and you would eventually die of asphyxiation. But they ensured that you would not pass out. The pain would shock you awake. Because Christ's death was so extremely public and high profile, I mean, these aren't just normal Roman soldiers that performed the crucifixion. They had to ensure that he was going to die because they did not want this uprising. So whenever they claimed like, hey, we stuck him with a spear and blood and water came out, that is a true scientific term to ensure that the human body is dead. That water that mixes within the sac of the heart can only happen if you're dead. You're asphyxiated, and that's scientifically proven. So the guards were not idiots. Their lives were on the line. As a Roman soldier, you could be executed if you do not perform your duties, which is why in Paul, you mentioned Paul, the soldiers that were strapped to him whenever Paul, like they woke up and like the door was open, they were freaked out because they thought we could die for this. We let you go. Same with the crucifixion of Christ. These soldiers literally could lose their lives if they did not perform their duties, especially with how high profile it was. And that's the same with the tomb. They did have soldiers guarding it because they knew how profile this was, high profile. So the fact that the body could not be produced is insane evidence that he actually did what he said he was claiming to do. And I promise you, Tyler, if you raise from the dead, I'm going to listen to what you have to say.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's so much more to it than that. I just wanted to hit some of the highlights. But if you get The Case for Christ, it's a great book. He literally went in trying to disprove the resurrection of Christ. and he interviewed a ton of individuals, and it's awesome. It's a very good book because at the time he's like, yeah, I don't believe this, so I'm gonna disprove it, and it's phenomenal. I highly recommend it.
Nice.
Sorry, went off on my little tangent.
No,
there.
I mean that's why I feel like I'm sitting in a sermon, but like that's the thing though, is like that's more interesting. That's like a more down to earth way of saying that stuff versus just like believe it,
Right,
because you have to believe it. Yeah,
the original point of blind faith, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You know,
Right.
you can use empirical evidence to help support.
And you can use extra biblical text to support that. This is not just all recorded in the Bible, even though the Bible is incredibly historic and it's a collection. It's not like it was just written. It's a collection of writings. So, but it's very reliable. But outside of that, there's other crazy text that support it. And that was what was so amazing to me. I'm like, why didn't anybody bring this up? There's multiple other individuals that talked about this Christ character and the chaos that he brought to the Roman Empire. Why did we never hear about that?
yeah.
Don't know. Like, to me, it's like, okay, a dude rising from the dead, come on. Like, there should be evidence of that, and there 1,000% is. And I'm just scratching the surface. Again, if you get that book, it's incredible. It goes into it in detail, but point being, it confirmed what should have happened if this did happen. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm convinced. Sweet, because I liked his message the best.
Yeah.
Like, I like knowing, and then the thought is like, and again, I apologize, guys, cut in whenever you want, but
yeah.
then it's like, okay, I like his message the best. And I'm like, well, why all of this in the first place, right? Like, why all of it? Why evil and all that kind of stuff? And when researching that, I was like, oh, it made perfect sense where, like, I can't get into the mind of God. It's so superior and above and beyond me. However, forced love is rape. I think we would all agree that it's
Sure.
rape.
Yep.
You force someone to love you, it's rape. And it's like, okay, so then
I think it's not love, but yeah.
it's not love.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So there's got to be a reason for it. And in order to choose God, there has to be a choice to be made. Therefore, evil has to exist in order to see the light. If I only knew the light, I wouldn't know what my choice was other than that.
My thing is like, can you have good without evil? Because to your point, it's
wouldn't know.
all relative.
Right.
So you have no sense of anchoring yourself to, like, if there's only one choice, like you said.
If
it's
there's
like,
only one choice.
This isn't good or bad. This is just it.
Correct.
So,
And people.
yeah, I think the same way on that.
Do we
front.
do we lose choice like when we die then? Or is it just we're shown heaven and at that point it's
Dude.
like, oh yeah, no, this is
When I get into discussions
So
about
good.
heaven, it's like, because people are always like, oh, you know, the pearly gates or whatever and fluffy clouds. I'm like, dude, we're not going to have any of our senses in the next world. So it's like, you've only lived your life with your senses. That's how we perceive reality. That, in my mind, doesn't exist when you die because you lose your body, right? Your body's a vessel. We have no idea what that experience, what does that even feel? Is there feeling? Like, what is that? Like, that state of being is so far removed from anything we can comprehend. You just can't know, right? That's my take on it. It's just like,
Well, I think your take is accurate. I mean, we are the only creation that's like both spirit and body. We're like both, but we're so fallen, we have no idea how amazing it actually is. And it says that. It's like, listen, I'm just going to tell you, it's the most amazing, incredible thing, but it's so far beyond your perception. Just know it's going to be amazing.
yeah, it's like trying to explain a unbelievable sunset to someone who's never seen,
Correct.
right? Like,
yeah.
there's no foundation on which you can start to comprehend that,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So it's like, that's how I see
But
it.
I guess like you
at least.
understand what I'm getting at there, right? Where it's like, okay, like you die, you go to heaven.
Yeah.
Like, could you fall from heaven? Right? Like theoretically,
I
not
guess
because
someone
you
did though,
accepted
right? I
Christ.
guess Satan
Well,
did
that's
it
what
at
I'm
some
saying.
So
point,
remember,
Right.
so Satan's different.
Yeah.
Satan does not have the excuse where he experienced God from day one and had the choice to choose or not choose him. I've never been in the presence of God? Have you? Like,
No, right.
we are so much, he was so much advantaged over us because that's why there was no redemption for him. It's like, dude, you literally saw me. And I limited my knowledge on purpose in order for you to make a decision to either choose me or not choose me, because forced love is rape, and I'm not going to force you to love me because that's not perfect. Perfect is when you choose to love somebody. That's when it's special. So he limited his foreknowledge on Satan, and Satan, because of, and it tells you the reasons, but I can't get into the mind of him. I just know it happened. But in God's infinite wisdom, actually use that in order to give us the choice now as well. And that's when it becomes perfect. This is not a perfect world, but this is a perfect means to a perfect world because I choose God. And I know the difference between good and evil, and I still choose that. And Christ kind of alluded to that when he's like, how much greater are those who haven't seen me and still choose me? How much greater are them? Mm-hmm. It's like, you look at me and you believe because you've seen everything I've done. How much greater are those who have not seen and still believe? Satan has no excuse. He literally saw it, and he got a third of them to believe him instead of like free will, man.
Yeah, I guess the question for me would be if you suffered through this existence, because I think a lot of living is suffering. Mm-hmm. Like, I think a lot of...
relatively speaking, yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy, man. Like, even the best situation in the world, everyone has struggles and personal things they need to overcome.
Yep.
So you overcome all of that, and then you get to heaven. I couldn't imagine a situation where you'd be like, oh, nah, I don't want this.
No, look,
you know what I mean?
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, like, so it's just so good that no one would care.
What do you mean by good? What's your?
I think
just perfect.
What
You know
you're
what I mean?
asking
Like,
is like, do you still have free will at that point?
Yeah,
if you're
like you have free
can't
will,
renounce
but
that.
you just
Yeah.
it's so good that, or like so perfect, or so otherworldly, or like just unspeakable, like we literally can't describe it. That it's just not even a concept, I guess.
That's how
Because
I
a lot
view it,
of,
I guess. I don't know.
I mean, a lot of growing up is just scared, right? Like, it's just like, well, you're either gonna burn in hell or you're gonna be in this perfect paradise. So pick.
All right, the hell thing. I mean, okay, so hell is the extinguishing of evil. I'm all for it. Like, hell is the absence of God, and God does away with it once and for all. So has it been absolutely tainted by us? Yep. Because I was the same way as a kid. I was terrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm terrified. But think about it. It's the extinguishing of evil. It's literally saying, listen, you don't want me? I'm going to respect your free will, and I'm going to be a gentleman enough that I will give you what you ask for, and I will stay away. I want you. I've died for you. But if I forced you to come join me, that's not love. Like, I'm forcing you. You got to make that choice. Now, I'm not going to let evil run rampant forever. There is an end to it. And I, for one, can't wait for that end. I have Crohn's disease. I wake up every day in pain. Can't wait for that to go away. Like, that'd be nice. Mm-hmm. I have a permanent tube in my ass tie. Can't wait for that to go away.
Sure.
Like, these things all go away. And like, hell is the absence of God, period. Like, that's really it. We've turned it into something worse. I'm not saying it's horrific. But he respects your decision. If you don't want to be there, he's not going to force you. And it was originally created to extinguish evil. I'm all for extinguishing evil. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of evil. So
yeah, I mean, I don't agree. I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
It'll be amazing, my friend. I like the fact that the Bible's like, listen, it's so freaking amazing. I'm not even going to try. Like, what's the point? Cool.
Yeah.
Good enough for me. Because if they tried to put it in terms of like this earth, I'm unimpressed. I'm sorry, but I am. And I think C.S. Lewis, he had a great point when he's like, when all experience within this life failed to meet my expectations, the only way I can like comprehend that is that I was not made for this world. Totally get it, man. I'm right there with you. Because I find there's nothing in this world that I have found, to that. My body and my soul feels like there's more. And I think because there is. I don't want heaven to be described in earthly terms because I am unimpressed.
That's completely fair. I think, I mean, I want to say it was C.S. Lewis whenever he was describing like running in a field in one of the books. I don't think it was Narnia, but one of them, and that was
Screw
the
tape letters.
description. The what?
Oh man, that's a
The
good
screw
one.
tape letters. You
No,
ever read
I-
that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, very good.
It's part of the Narnia.
Oh,
Chronicles,
I
but
see, I
it's
see.
not. It wasn't like the Lion, the Witch,
I
and
gotcha.
Wardrobe, because that's like the most famous one.
Oh, gotcha. It was one of the because there was like 6 or 7.
Was it the last battle, or is that my
Last battle was one of them. Yeah.
Is it okay? So I think it was that, but it was like heaven, or like whatever the kind of analogy was. It wasn't like this glamorous thing, or wasn't it? It was just like it was an open field, nice day, and you just run infinitely.
Okay, well
And-
that does nothing for me.
No, but it did for me. So my thing was like if it was like, oh, it's giant skyscrapers of gold and streets of crystals and all this, like that wouldn't have done it. It was this like really small, like, I know when you're running and it's like there's a certain point when you're just like, oh, I feel really good, and then it's like, oh my god, I hate everything, you know, that type of thing, right? So the idea that you could just like run infinitely and just be like completely free, no care in the world, just running through a field or whatever, for whatever reason, whenever I was reading that, I was like, that was amazing to me. So it's like, okay, if heaven's like just that, I would be like happy, you know what I mean? Which obviously it's not, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it was evoking that feeling, or that kind of just like complete bliss type of thing. I'm not doing it justice, but when he wrote it, I was like, it's actually a really good description. It was probably my
Fair
favorite
enough.
description of heaven.
I just, yeah, like trying to describe something that's indescribable is difficult. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's why you get ancient
It's
aliens
impossible,
and things
some
like
might
that.
say.
Yeah.
agree.
Ancient aliens.
Yeah. That's all.
Yeah.
Which I have another gift for you boys. So when I came, obviously, well, the listeners don't know, but I always bring gifts because I love these guys. It's that simple.
He spoils us, and then we feel real
Spoils
bad whenever
us,
it's
yeah.
like,
We don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Oh, nonsense. So I wanted to give you. Give me 1 second. Here you go, Johnny.
Oh,
Oh, these are like proper
yeah.
gifts.
And again, you don't have to read them, but I felt compelled. These are the two books that hit either spectrum. One, I am very rational, but the other one is just because you guys talked a lot about heaven, and Imagine the God of Heaven is pretty amazing because it takes an individual who studied like near-death experiences, so to speak. And again, I'm one that was like, that's complete BS. But just there's some interesting things in there.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting take on it. Those are the two books that were extremely influential in my life.
So we have Imagine the God of Heaven by John Burke, and I don't have enough faith to be an atheist by Norman L.
Geisler. And Frank Turk.
and Frank Turk.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I mean, I think you guys would find those extremely readable, very, very good. Like I said, those were the two that were the most influential on completely different ends of the spectrum. And
Which would you start with?
I guess it depends on your character. The I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, that hits me because I'm very like, show me the proof.
Yeah.
I want to see the evidence, and that hits it on every single level. Like I did a terrible job. It's Friday today, and I apologize to
No,
all
you
the
did
listeners.
a great job, man.
That book lays it out.
Yeah,
and
this is like charts and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
I like
very
a
cool.
good chart. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very readable, and it does it in a fantastic way. Imagine the
Sure.
God of Heaven, like
This is more spiritual, maybe.
yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
so like I don't cry. I mean, I do cry all the time, actually, but not
Everyone
over
cries.
not over like books.
Please,
but
I played Tekken with you. It's fine.
some of the stories in there, like there's
Yeah.
a tear in the eye. Like
Yeah.
it's completely different.
Yeah.
And guys, like I come here with like evidence, and we didn't even touch half of this.
I know. I feel bad.
I don't care, but most people are not like me. I can tell you all the ins and outs, and I can give you all the reasons. Unless it touches your heart, it means nothing to you. And that's the beauty of the God that I discovered, because it goes beyond just the rational mind. Now, I'm one of the ones that I have to see it rationally before I believe. 99% of the people, I can give you all of this, and they're like, it has to hit the heart. And that book does that to a degree. So that's why I brought two books, got you guys two books that are on either end of the spectrum.
I really appreciate it, man.
Oh,
Thank
man,
you.
that's beautiful. Love it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I mean, I think
Sure.
is that a good place to
Yeah.
wrap it up?
I think so.
Yeah.
We went from Astrobot to
It's the beauty of the couch
Salvation,
company
yeah.
There's a
podcast.
connection there somewhere. No, but thanks for coming on, man. Really
Love you,
appreciate
boys.
it.
You guys are
Love you
amazing.
too.
Yep, appreciate it.
No, that was a lot of fun. And yeah, check us out, couchcompany.games. We've got all our good stuff on there, reviews, top fives, everything, our podcast. Thanks again to Justin for coming on. Always an interesting intellectual conversation. He comes well prepared, over prepared, you might say.
Definitely
Sorry we couldn't get to
overprepared.
everything, but
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating. I learned a lot. I always do when you come on, so that's always really exciting for me.
And my life is always enriched every time I'm around both of you. And I'm not just saying that, I literally mean it. So, you guys, I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming. That's awesome. All right, we're gonna be here.
I'm gonna tear up.
I know,
That's fine.
dude.
That's
Every
okay.
time, man. The best. We're going to be here, same time, same place next week. Thanks for joining us on the couch. Peace.